Just keep an open mind. Professor Russell had rasped to me over the bulky yellow phone as the seaplane made its final descent. You don't get into this business with a closed one. I know. The professor's distorted voice continued. I know. He suddenly sounded kind of sad, distant, or drunk. Before I could ask what was the matter, he had hung up, and the crappy breakfast I had wolfed down earlier nearly spilled out of my mouth as the plane performed what could only be described as a rough landing. The sea below was extra choppy, as it had been all afternoon. Even through the thick steel walls of the cargo ship that took me to the edge of the pole's crust, I could feel the icy cold waves beating down upon the ever-swaying structure. As I had originally boarded the seaplane topside of the cargo ship, I couldn't help but feel as though I was boarding a child's toy. Just looking at the flimsiness of the wings pushed forward a gruesome vision of my early demise amongst the choppy, half-frozen waves below. But I digress. Now that we had actually landed, there was only one thing on my mind: the white. You can read all the books, watch all the documentaries, but nothing can prepare you for the sheer magnitude of the white the first time you see it up close and personal. White, as far as I could see. Only white. At least, you'll finally get your white Christmas. Julie, my wife, had damn near shouted at me as I waved goodbye from the noisy and humid South American dock. I love you, I had shouted back, but the ship's wide double doors had slammed shut, and I wasn't even sure if she had heard me. But that was 100 years ago, a million miles away. At least, that's what it felt like as I glared at the all-white, unmoving tundra through the seaplane's fishbowl they called the window. This is your stop, pal. The pilot that hadn't said a word the entire trip told me with a crooked grin. I clambered out of the too small cabin, and my feet nearly slid out from under me as they hit the ice-covered, ever-swaying dock. A wide, tough-like weather hand caught my shoulder before I could fall completely on my ass. Welcome to Antarctica, a muffled, feminine voice that didn't match the hand grunted towards the ground. I looked upwards, towards the broad-shouldered owner of both the hand and the voice, to find a hood, an ice-encrusted scarf, and two beady eyes staring back at me. Professor Russell, the scarf said. Nice to finally meet you. Actually, the professor couldn't make it. My name is Garrison Cummins. I'm one of the professor's research associates. Oh, the scarf replied immediately, unable or unwilling to hide her disappointment. Name's Christine. Welcome. Christine began to reach into the cabin of the seaplane and remove my bags. It was at this point I remember truly taking in my surroundings. Not just the all-consuming, almost blinding whiteness, but the frigid, impossible-to-describe cold that came with it. Ahead of me was the outpost itself, Research Station 1231. From the sky, the building was a dot. Up close, it really didn't look much bigger. Professor tell you what you were getting into down here? I heard Christine mumble from inside the plane. An anomaly, I answered. That's just about all you would say. Christine laughed as her hood, her scarf, and those black eyes came back into my view. An anomaly. Christine nearly spat the words out. That's definitely one fucking way to put it. The tall woman dropped my bags into the snow and moved towards the pilot, handing him a wad of bills. Better get back to your ship, Christine said to the crooked grin staring at us through the plane's windshield. You don't want to be here at night. Too goddamn cold, right? I heard the pilot laugh. Something like that, she muttered back as the twin propellers began to whir. As the seaplane took off, I thought about asking Christine for more details, but before I could, the large, sullen woman turned to me with those beady eyes. You believe in all that stuff, right? What I talked about with the professor, I mean. All that weird stuff. Yes, I answered immediately. I kinda have to, I finished with a smile. She didn't return one. We were drilling. She started, her eyes as vacant as ever. I don't even know what. We just followed the orders given to us. We were drilling and drilling. She began to stutter, her eyes honing hypnotically past where I stood, as if she were looking right through me. And you found something? I gasped, trying to get her back on the track. At the bottom? She paused, sort of smiling, sort of frowning, her emotions fighting an intermittent and very physical battle upon her face. "Well, that's just it," Christine finally continued in a low grunt. "That's just the thing. There was no bottom." The woman was cut off as a horrible crazed shriek coming from the base's main entrance penetrated through the wintry silence. A man sporting similar black eyes to Christine's, though only half the clothes, burst through the front door and clambered manically towards the seaplane, now in the air and well on its way back to the cargo ship. He was screaming and sobbing as loud as he could, his hands stretched toward the vibrant sky, begging the plane to come back. I heard Christine mutter at least 3 swear words before she approached the man, lifted her arm and sent him reeling to the snow-covered ground with a single almost casually clenched fist. There was silence again as Christine peered down at her fallen comrade. The man's face and mouth were covered in an impossible amount of blood. "You broke his nose," I exclaimed before I could stop myself. "No, I didn't," Christine said with a disturbing lack of worry in her tone. From 1231, 2 more faces appeared, all bundled up. "Sorry, Christine," one of the worried faces sheepishly called from the entrance. "He got through the cuffs." "Jesus fucking Christ," I heard Christine call out as she surveyed the nearly unconscious body before her. "Get him inside." As the 2 figures, both men, emerged from the entrance to get the slumped-over man back into the base, I took note of his left wrist. A pair of blood-covered handcuffs dangled uselessly against the ground. As for the crazed man's right wrist, it and the hand were gnarled, damn near to the bone. Bite marks. His own. "I guess I owe you some answers," Christine mumbled. A light snow began to fall as we headed towards the base. I paused. Froze was more like it. Beyond the structure, I swear, there in the white, I saw something stir within the snow. Something moved for sure. And yet, somehow, I didn't feel a sensation like I was being watched by a physical presence, but rather a shaky mental confusion, like something horrible and unseen and angry was staring right back at me from the nothingness of the flattened tundra. And yet, I was unable or unwilling to physically comprehend it. A hollow wind blew, and I felt a tingling in my spine I hadn't felt since I was a child when my parents took me to the Philadelphia Zoo for the first time. I remembered the boa, sitting tangled in its too small compartment. "Don't worry," the pimply-faced tour guide had assured me as the blood drained from my face. "He can't see us, just a mirror on the other side." But no, I knew that wasn't true. The way those black, predatory eyes glared back at me through the thin protective glass. The way my young mind wandered to a gruesome conclusion of what would happen if it was feeding time, and that large glass pane suddenly poofed out of existence as if it had never been there in the first place. Later, I would recall this moment of recollection with great fascination, once I truly had a grasp of the primal horrors I was facing here at the icy far end of the earth, as if my mind knew what I was up against and was trying to warn me with a fleeting memory. The thin pane of glass, and all it stood for, as if it had never been there in the first place. "Christine?" I called far too loudly, too cowardly as I watched the 4 figures shuffle into the relative safety of the base. "Wait for me." The snow was now falling much heavier, the wind whipping the large flakes into a frenzied swirl. As I tore my glance away from the white and away from whatever it was that was making my breath labored and my movements tense, I took note of the look on Christine's face. The same half smile, half frown from earlier, as if she knew exactly how I felt. I nearly fell out of bed at the sound of the nighttime alarm, a blaring shriek they didn't quite prepare us for as we trained for the job. See the world, make money, be a part of something. What a crock. Tompkins stuck his head in the room even though my tits were hanging clear out. He didn't even seem to notice. "Should I get the gun?" he barked. "Not so fast," I shouted over the alarm as I struggled to grab a bra that wasn't too twisted to hell. "What's going on out there?" "It's the hole. The fucking hole." See, what they don't prepare you for when you get to Antarctica is just how much goddamn snow there is. I know that sounds stupid, but until you see it, you just wouldn't believe it. So when a weird bitch in a too small suit offers you 6 figures to watch a bunch of old hits shovel fucking snow for 6 months, hell, you don't really think twice. I sure didn't. But goddamn, the first day that little shitbird dropped us off, I knew I was in over my head. "You'll be using a drill," the woman told me. She introduced herself as a doctor. Pretty standard stuff. I sit through a mouthful of stuffed flounder I was enjoying on the company's dime. So why all the secrecy? The contracts? Hell, the fucking money. She didn't even flinch when she asked the next part. "Miss Hart, do you believe in God?" The conversation only got weirder from there. "Christine!" Tompkins, screaming my name, snapped me back to it as I approached the hall of the base, the unending alarm really beginning to piss me off. "Tompkins, shut that goddamn alarm off." I surveyed the surrounding research shanty and was met by the faces of the damned. Of course, the rest of the team always looked like that. Besides Tompkins, security, there was the Quigley brothers, Ad and Lawrence, the Brit engineers that designed the fucking super drill. Next to them stood Art Hinckley, our doctor for research and medical purposes. Then there was Brian Parker, our cook, as well as Sid Jenkins and an Inuit we think was previously homeless we just called Hal. Together, the two of them made up our brute labor force. God fucking bless him. The only one missing was Michael Hart, my fucking brother and the only man that could possibly find a fix even at the cold-ass end of the earth. "Where's Michael?" I shouted just as the alarm died down. I cursed and rubbed my throbbing temple. "Hell, Sid, he was the one that pulled the alarm," Tompkins shouted excitedly, as if the fucking thing was still blaring. "Sid, he ran back to the hole right afterward." "Tompkins?" I cut him off. "Take a fucking breath." "Hal?" "Yes, ma'am." Hal grunted politely through a salt and pepper Santa beard. "You saw Michael pull it?" "Yes, ma'am," he said again, pointing down the hall, towards the back of the base and towards the hole. The hole we've been drilling for weeks now. The hole that just kept going and going and going and going. "And what exactly are we looking for?" I had asked the good doctor after she explained the drilling process during our orientation. "Whatever it is you find," she answered with a smile. So we drilled. We drilled with the biggest goddamn drill I'd ever seen. Apparently the Quigleys came to the company's attention after developing a remote drill that could reach the bottom of the Pacific, but was light enough to be towed. Later, Ed would tell me that the company only had one question before they signed the check. What if you made it bigger? "Do we all have to go out there?" Brian asked lazily as I grabbed the nearest thermal coat off the rack. "Only if I tell you to," I barked back. I took a quick glance at the wall clock. Nearly 4 a.m. Shit, I muttered, already missing my bed. "Hal, Sid, Dr. Hinckley, come with me." "I'll grab my bag," the doctor said with firm dignity, even for 4 in the fucking morning. "I should come too," Tompkins practically whined, somehow already holding the base's only firearm, a single-shot rifle I begged the company to keep locked up. "No, and put that fucking thing away before." I was cut off by a scream, a horrible fucking scream. It echoed through the walls of the base with a reverberating howl that was barely human. "Whoa," I heard Sid mumble after a moment. "Holy shit, Michael, what the fuck?" I muttered as I tore the rifle from Tompkins' hands. A chorus of "We're coming too" followed as practically the entire crew bellowed it in unison. The hole itself was created just behind the base's main structure, as were our orders. The Quigley's drill was actually built directly atop the base's reinforced roof, attached to a crane that allowed it to stretch up to 2,000 feet. Not that it needed to. A steel cable as thick as a grown man's arm snaked around the entire base, built into the walls to keep both the drill and structure stable throughout the process. I didn't ask, but Lawrence told me it could stretch for miles and was the main pulley system to keep the drill going until it hit something. Of course, that was the problem. It never did. I felt the penetrating cold before I even rounded the corner leading to the rear entrance. As we reached the already open rear, I motioned the team to give me some room. The wind from outside was whipping up a storm in what was once our main dining hall. Now it just looked like the inside of a fucking walk-in freezer. "Everybody back!" I shouted as I pulled an emergency flare out of a first aid kit hanging on the wall. Before I could even light the fucking thing, one of those unearthly screams caused the entire team, myself included, to practically jump out of our skins. A split second later, Michael was running through the rear entrance, completely goddamn naked. "Michael?" I shouted. "That's impossible." I heard the doctor squeal as he made his way towards the first aid kit and snagged the small thermite blanket from within. We gathered around Michael as he shook and shivered upon the floor. "Somebody get that door shut," Tompkins shouted. Nobody budged. "Michael?" I asked as the doctor wrapped him in the warm material. "Michael, what is it? What's happening?" "The hole," he shuddered, pointing a blue and blistered bony nub of a finger towards the rear entrance. "What about it?" Tompkins demanded. Michael stopped shivering for a moment and turned his head, the coal black eyes we both inherited from our mother penetrating my very soul as he faced me. "Dad says, keep the door unlocked tonight," Michael whispered through chapped lips. "Keep the door unlocked. It's been a long day." And then he began to howl with laughter. I stood up to keep myself from knocking his goddamn teeth out. The feeling passed, however, as another one of those earth-shattering screams echoed through the base. "Holy Christ," Tompkins muttered. "That's coming from outside." "No shit," I mumbled as I lit the flare. I tossed the bright thing outside into the cold, snowy darkness. All was quiet as the blinding flame tip rolled across the tundra and towards the hole. Darkness danced around the orange-red glow with an eerie, hollow precision. Nothing. The flare rolled to the crest of the hole, stopping idly just at the lip, just close enough to illuminate the face of my dead bastard of a father climbing to the top of the hole with casual elegance. We gasped. He smiled. He waved. And then, just like that, he let go, disappearing into the bottomless darkness. I fainted just as hell forced the rear entrance closed. "Do you believe me?" I asked. Garrison paused, but didn't look up from his notebook. "The professor did," I said, when I spoke to him over the phone. "Well," Garrison finally started. "If he didn't, he wouldn't have asked me to come." I smiled, kind of. He went back to writing. "What did the company think about my coming here?" he asked. "They didn't. I'm paying for you to be here." He stopped writing, but only for a moment. "And what happened next?" Garrison finally asked me from across the small office we had constructed in the former dining hall. A large tarp covered the intrusion in the floor's center. "After you passed out?" Garrison continued. "A lot," I answered as casually as I could. My gaze wandered through the glass window to my left, toward the now setting sun. The pretty reds and yellows and oranges danced just so off the mouth of the hole. "But mostly," I finally continued, "this is the part of the story where people started dying." "A fucking Wendigo," Tompkins nodded excitedly towards Hal. "Right, man? That's what you guys call it, right? A Wendigo?" Hal grunted, though he didn't say a word, his usual go-to response to any question you asked him. "Calm down, Tompkins," I said as I fished some stashed ammo out of the cupboard by the rear entrance. The company wouldn't let me lock up the gun, only the ammunition. Figure that one out. The screaming never stopped. Not ours, I mean. Whatever the hell it was that lived inside that fucking hole. Since the incident with Michael, now an hour ago, none of us dared to catch a wink. And every so often, even through the howling wind and the falling snow, we'd hear that ungodly, unearthly shriek. The shriek of the damned, we would later say. It seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere. The doc returned from Michael's room. Once we got him some fresh clothes, I had him secured to his bed just to be on the safe side. Your brother, Christine. Dr. Hinckley started, then stopped. Does anybody have a cigarette? Nobody spoke up. He's unwell, the doctor continued, a little defeated. Of course, after what we all seem to experience, maybe none of us are well. Mass hallucination, the Quigleys shouted in unison. I hate it when they did that. That's a thing, Ed continued triumphantly. I read about it. So is Wendigo, Tompkins chimed in. Jesus, Tompkins, Sid started as he began lighting a cigarette, much to Hinckley's evident dismay. Shut it. Quiet, everybody, I barked. Now if we're going to figure out what the hell is going on here, we're going to have to. I was cut off by yet another howl. I swore this one was coming from underneath us. I'll make some coffee, Parker mumbled sheepishly as he scuttled towards the kitchen. Holy shit, I cursed as I rose from my chair, stole the cig from Sid's mouth, took a long puff and handed it to the doc. It wasn't tobacco. Nice, I heard the doctor mutter after a quick inhale. Ed? Lawrence? I called, trying to get the Brits' attention. Can we get somebody on the radio? From the company? One of them asked. No, goddamn Santa Claus, I shouted, now addressing the entire room. Guys, please, meet me halfway here. I took my previous seat and leaned against the rifle with my forehead, suddenly feeling very exhausted. Parker walked over with a used paper cup filled with what the company called coffee. Thanks, I managed as I took the small cup. There was a long moment of silence. What did everyone see? I finally asked. What did they see come out of the hole? There was another moment of nothing, the muffled rushing wind from outside being the only real noise within the entire base. My wife, Sid was the first to say. Been dead though, been dead a long time. Mine too, Tompkins piped up, the excitement from earlier now nowhere to be found in his voice. My wife, there she was, plain as day, he gulped. Cancer took her 7 years ago. Car accident, Sid said as the two men nodded at one another. Our mom, the Quigleys added in unison. Maya, a patient, I heard Dr. Hinckley mumble. A former. Tommy Perkins, Parker practically spat, a cup of coffee shaking in his grasp. In high school, we were close until college. He left. I stayed. Parker trailed off. For a moment, nobody said a word. Died, he continued, somewhat reluctantly. 4 years ago. At least, that's what I heard anyway. My father. I finally spoke. The day we buried him, Mike and I threw a fucking party. And yet, there he was, smiling right back at me in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the night, in the middle of a goddamn snowstorm. I hadn't realized I was shouting until I saw the look on the men's faces. I took a deep breath and tried my best to lean back against the freezing wall behind me. It's insane, I said, mostly to myself, as I tried to settle my nerves. Totally goddamn insane. Ijirak. Hal grunted. We all turned to face him at once, surprised to hear something other than a yes or no come out of his mouth. Not Wendigo. Hal continued. Ijirak. The face. It. The old Inuit made a sweeping gesture in front of his own face and grunted. Changes, he finished. Changes? What do you mean? Thompson asked. Word. Hal stammered, searching for the phrase. Shifts. The shape. Shape shifter, I said. Hal pointed at me and nodded, the smallest of smiles briefly flashing within his beard. Daughter, he said as the smile quickly vanished and a stark redness I had never seen before invaded his naturally dark eyes. Small, he continued with gagged words, holding his hands together in a spherical shape no bigger than a football. Too small. We nodded in silence. Until... And then, with absolutely no warning, The floor in front of us started to buckle. The concrete shifted, and a digging sound, like I had never heard in my life, began to fill the entire room. Not like a machine though, like hands and claws. It was even closer this time. Too close, we were about to find out, as something very big and very strange and very angry was coming through the floor, whether we wanted it to or not. I recall reading that name in the headline on the local paper. I could barely pronounce it, and I was struck by how unusual a name could make it to the front page. And then I saw the picture. Oumuamua, the Scout. That's what we're going to call it this time. Appropriate. That long, slender form that the so-called experts refer to as cigar-shaped. The very phrase conjures up notions of southern yokels taking a wrong turn and coming across invaders from outer space. Personally, I think it looks like a cat turd, but that's just my professional opinion. The first time I came across one of these cigars, I was a child. It sliced through the night sky above my father's ramshackle farm, no higher off the ground than a kite. I watched as the unusual object flew overhead twice, and then it landed. Or rather, it passed. It passed right through the ground, right before my eyes. I could only watch helplessly as the long, slender object seemingly phased through the brown and green earth before me. That evening, I had tried desperately to explain what I had seen to my father and received a passive, booze-soaked backhand for my troubles. For the rest of the night, I lay in bed, staring through my single bedroom window, watching the exact spot I had seen the massive structure pass through the ground as if it were made of thin air. In many ways, though I was a small boy, this was the start of my career as what the mainstream media would describe as a paranormal investigator. As years passed by, I had begun to accrue a vast knowledge of the unknown. Starting at my local library, I ate up whatever scant information I could find on aliens and ghosts and goblins and shapeshifters and monsters and things that went bump in the night. I eventually discovered Z-list magazines that covered the strange and macabre and welcomed readers to send in any information they might have on their own first-hand knowledge of such subjects. The night my father found those magazines, he beat me so hard and his face became so beet red that I was sure he was going to have a heart attack right then and there. But no, the attack had waited, coming 2 weeks later as he watched his favorite Phils playing his favorite game while guzzling his favorite cheap beer. He called my name as he died. I ignored him, something I never told anybody. The way his voice was pitched with a desperate nervousness I had never heard before, I knew something bad and final was coming. But I didn't make a sound. I only found him as I left through the front door with as many belongings as I could fit into the overnight bag I had received from one of my magazines for being a subscriber. The TV was still on, and the old man's eyes were still wide open, though the light, what little light was ever there, was long gone. I voiced my opinion that he was what I considered to be an inadequate father, and then I left. But I digress. I apologize. The mind has a habit of wandering when you've hit this stage in your life. The no going back stage that seems to pitch a perfect balance between tranquility and sheer madness. Oumuamua. Oh, that name. You know, the more I think about it, the more it does kind of grow on me. Anyway, years began to pass. I had turned my newfound orphan status into a liberating license to travel the country. I used whatever resources I could get from one place to another, sometimes trading whatever it was I needed to get by. Eventually, I began to amass money in more devious ways than I ever dared to admit. But whatever it was that got me to my goal, I did not care. At that time, nobody really asked questions anyway, and a lonely teenager hanging out at a rest stop was just something you didn't need to know about. Besides, I can tell you that most of my customers were far from what might be described as queer anyway. Seeing as I find myself in my present condition, I guess I don't really have a problem admitting that lots of stolen wedding rings would eventually pay for most of my tuition. There seemed to be an unspoken rule that the ring had to come off before lying with me. Easy enough to lift as the John would lie in the cheap motel bed, The post-orgasm stupor leading to a full sleep of images of my bruised and battered insides. But again, I digress. University was a figurative breeze, minuscule semesters passing in the blink of an eye. My years of lonesome wandering hadn't prepared me for the social aspect expected of a young college freshman. Just as well, more time to pursue the real subject I cared about. The only subject I cared about. The thing that would eventually be called Oumuamua. I began to research other similar sightings. It wasn't hard, of course, as at that time, a UFO craze was sweeping the nation, and there seemed to be a new report on the evening news at least once a week. The old cliches began to turn into the norm. An old married couple returning from a party, a single father working late and was just returning home, the young high school couple canoodling on Lover's Lane, interrupted by a cigar-shaped thing. A terrible device not from this world. They were right, of course. It's not from this world. But then again, the recent reports. This newly discovered Oumuamua just drifting by our realm, it wouldn't be right to call it alien either. Oh, it's alien in the sense that it's strange, different, unexpected, but not in the sense that it's from another planet. Just another world. And that world, the one they faced into, the one they faced through to. It sucks, of course, for a lack of better phrase, finding out your entire civilization, your entire world history, your entire population, all the petty squabbles of politics and religion and the day-to-day grind, love, sorrow, happiness, sadness, glee, horror, all of that rich stuff that makes up our planet. Useless, undeniably useless when you come to realize you are nothing more than the last rest stop on the way home. On the way back to the real plane, where death is just the entry fee. Which brings me to Antarctica. That pathetic woman and those lost souls sent to the end of the world to discover something we're not even equipped to understand. That damned company that put them up to it. That put me up to it. And poor Gary Cummins, the only student that actually applied for the apprenticeship. My only friend. They could drill from the South Pole right on through to Santa's living room floor. They wouldn't find a thing. And yet, that company, this project of theirs, they just wouldn't let up. They had recorded the heightened electromagnetic activity. They even had witnesses, dozens actually. The crew of an oil tanker that had gone too close to shore had seen the fucking thing right there in snow-heightened broad daylight. Watched as it faced on through to the other side. They just wouldn't let up, and so one of those things decided to make its presence known on its own accord. And fucking Oumuamua, or whatever the hell it is they do call themselves, has come out of hiding. If the earlier sightings were a Greyhound bus with a fast lane ticket to the plane, that monstrosity currently circling our doomed blue marble might just be the goddamn Titanic, ready to surpass the ultimate toll, reap the ultimate reward. The end. That's what's coming. And to my fellow kin, my earthly comrades, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the part I played in orchestrating a worldwide disaster our biblical tomes have not even come close to preparing us for. I'm sorry. 1,000 times. May Oumuamua forgive me. The preceding text was found, seemingly quite hastily typed upon an open laptop in the home of Professor Anton Russell. The professor's body was discovered lying upon the floor of his bedroom. Though in his hand he grasped a pistol, it remained unfired. The official autopsy revealed a sudden and massive aneurysm as the cause of death. Professor Russell left behind no wife and no children. They sent for me in the dead of winter. It was the season of the long night in Antarctica when the sun refused to rise, and I had no idea what to expect. Even the instructions were vague, almost cryptic, except for one clear detail. I was to report to a research outpost near the pole, isolated in the most desolate place on Earth. As my plane landed, a storm whipped the ice, wind screeching and rattling the metal of the craft. The sky was a bruised shade of purple, and the lights from the base ahead blinked like tiny pale stars. I felt an oppressive weight settle on my chest the moment I stepped onto the icy ground. A young soldier, face half-hidden under a hood and goggles, approached. He looked relieved to see the priest's collar under my thick wool coat. A good feeling, despite me being clearly out of place. "Father Martin?" he asked, his voice muffled by the scarf wrapped around his mouth. I nodded, clutching my back close, feeling the bite of the wind seep through every layer. "I am. And you are?" "Corporal Haynes, sir," he replied, standing stiffly. "They have been waiting for you. You're to come with me to the briefing room immediately." I followed, casting a last look at the endless stretch of ice, only broken by low hills and jagged cliffs in the distance. There was nothing here but emptiness and the howling wind. The silence was unlike anything I'd ever known, vast and profound, but laced with something unsettling. I pushed the feeling aside as we reached the entrance. Inside the outpost, I was met with metal walls, harsh fluorescent lights, and soldiers in somber green coats, glancing at me with something I couldn't quite place. We passed down narrow corridors until Haynes stopped outside a heavy steel door. He knocked, and a voice inside called for us to enter. The door creaked open to reveal a man in a crisp uniform, older, with an air of authority that distinctly marked him as someone in command. He stood when I entered, offering a sharp nod. "Father Martin?" he said, extending his hand. "Colonel Beckett, thanks for coming." I shook his hand, feeling the firmness of his grip. "I wasn't given many details, Colonel, only that I was needed here for something unusual." He exchanged a look with Haynes, and I caught a flicker of discomfort in his expression. "Yes, we apologize for the secrecy. There are certain elements of this mission we felt best to leave unsaid until you arrived." I raised an eyebrow, feeling the knot in my stomach tighten. "Go on." He hesitated, just for a moment, before continuing. "There's a formation nearby. A cave. It's something we found while mapping this area. Strange. Enormous. Almost like a natural monument. We've had personnel go in and out of it, but it's difficult to explain." Beckett's gaze settled on me, and in his eyes, I saw something that chilled me to the bone. Fear. "I think it's best if you see it for yourself," he said quietly. The drive out was grim. The wind had picked up, tearing against the sides of the vehicle like it was clawing to get in. Outside, snow and ice stretched endlessly, broken only by jagged, leaden rocks protruding like the spine of some long-dead giant buried beneath the white. Corporal Haynes drove in silence, his hands clenched on the wheel. I sat in the back with two soldiers. Neither spoke. They watched the windows, stiff, tense, as if the very land outside might put up a fight against us. Colonel Beckett had given me minimal information before sending us off. "The cave. There's something about it," he had said, staring down at a map on his desk, though I sensed he wasn't really seeing it. "We had a team survey it when we first found it, but they didn't get far before they started acting strangely. One of them even..." He broke off, and I'd seen a shadow flicker across his face. "How do you mean, acting strangely?" I'd pressed, though I wasn't sure I wanted to hear the answer. He looked up at me. His face set, yet his eyes betrayed something close to dread. "Degradation, paranoia, hallucinations." One man said he felt like he was being watched. Another claimed he could hear voices whispering. They didn't make it far into the cave before I pulled them out. "It's as though the place has a presence." He cleared his throat. "I don't put much stock into the supernatural, but my men do. They'll feel better having a priest along." Now, as we drove toward that ominous formation, I could hear Haynes' voice, calling for us. "Go on." He said, extending his hand. "There's something about it." He said quietly. "I think it's best if you see it for yourself." The drive out was grim. The wind had picked up, tearing against the sides of the vehicle like it was clawing to get in. Outside, snow and ice stretched endlessly, broken only by jagged, leaden rocks protruding like the spine of some long-dead giant buried beneath the white. Corporal Haynes drove in silence, his hands clenched on the wheel. I sat in the back with two soldiers. Neither spoke. They watched the windows, stiff, tense, as if the very land outside might put up a fight against us. His words replayed in my mind. Something about it has a presence. The soldiers and I remained silent until, finally, the vehicle stopped. Haynes killed the engine, and the sudden silence was so intense it was almost violent. We stepped out into the biting wind, and there, only a few yards away, it stood. A massive stone formation jutted out of the ice, half buried, its shape tenebrous and abrasive against the pale landscape. It had to be about 150 feet tall and 50 feet wide. The entrance itself was a wide black opening, rounded at the edges and jagged rocks outlining it. The snow seemed to pile around the cavern in unnatural drifts, almost as though the cave had disturbed the ice into cracking and shifting at odd, unnatural angles. One of the soldiers, Private Mills, stood beside me, his voice low. "Doesn't look right, does it?" "No," I murmured, swallowing. "It doesn't." Sergeant Davis, the tallest of the group, tried to break the tension with a forced chuckle. "It's just a weird rock formation," he muttered, though his gaze never left the entrance. "Nothing more." I glanced at him, studying the tightness around his mouth. The way he clenched his rifle. They all carried their weapons as if they expected something to leap from the depths at any moment. "Look," Davis continued, his tone gruff as he glanced at me. "I don't know if you really believe in any of this priest stuff, but just stay close, alright?" I nodded, offering what I hoped was a reassuring smile. "I'll stay close." The men visibly relaxed, but only just. Together, we approached the mouth of the cave, each step crunching under us while the wind muffled out all other sounds. The entrance loomed larger the closer we came, and my skin prickled with this inexplicable sensation of being watched, as if something lay behind those pitch-shaded pools of emptiness and was observing us from within. Private Mills stopped suddenly, his gaze fixed on the ground near the opening. "Look," he whispered, and we followed his gaze. Tracks. Bare footprints in the snow, leading toward the cave mouth and disappearing. The size of the prints suggested they weren't from a grown man, but rather from a child. "Who?" Corporal Haynes began, his voice barely audible. "No one's been out here recently," Sergeant Davis muttered, voice strained. "And no one goes barefoot in this weather. They'd be dead in minutes." I felt my hand instinctively reach for the small silver crucifix around my neck. Beckett's words echoed in my mind. "There's something about it. A presence." Without another word, we moved forward, stepping into the cavern's gaping mouth. The light behind us faded rapidly, and warm, damp air seemed to seep from the walls, filling the space with an almost suffocating blanket. The beams from our flashlights swept over the cave walls, casting long shifting shadows that seemed to ripple with the flicker of movement. Inside, the air carrying a faint, earthy smell that reminded me of wet metal. Something about it made my skin crawl, though I couldn't place why. "Father," Sergeant David said, his voice rough but low. He shifted on his feet, eyes avoiding mine. "Before we go deeper, maybe you could, say something. For luck." The other soldiers nodded, their faces tense and wary in the dim glow. Despite their rifles and years of training, they looked like nervous young boys. I nodded, gathering my words, feeling the chill settle deeper into my skin. I raised a hand, fingers grazing the crucifix that hung from my neck. "Almighty God, we place ourselves in your hands as we walk through this place. Shield us, guide us, and let your light be our way. Protect these men, keep them steady, and grant us the courage to see this journey through." As I spoke, a low, distant noise echoed through the cavern. It was faint, just a whisper of a sound, but unmistakably unnatural. A slow, grinding roll that rumbled through the walls. It was as if the stone was shifting, groaning under some unimaginable force. It lingered in the background, fading in and out like a dull protest. The soldiers exchanged uneasy glances, gripping their weapons a little tighter. Mills spoke up, his voice soft. You heard that, right? I mean, that wasn't just me." "It's probably just the earth settling," Davis offered, though his voice rattled. "These caves are old. Could be shifting ice, rocks settling, something like that." "Yeah," Corporal Haynes muttered. "Just rocks." I lowered my hand, tucking the cross back into my jacket. "We'll be alright," I said, though my words sounded hollow, even to my own ears. We pressed on, single file, stepping deeper into the cave's dark throat. The walls grew narrower, angling downward into a gradual slope. It felt oddly smooth underfoot, not jagged or broken as one would expect. Instead, it was a continuous, winding path, curving gently downward like the inside of some strange, winding funnel. The rock itself shimmers when the flashlight beams caught it, not with any mineral gleam, but something damp, as if coated in a thin film of syrupy fluid. Beyond that was a subtle warmth coming from the walls, far warmer than the frozen air outside. "Feels different in here, doesn't it?" Mills muttered, his eyes darting over the tunnel walls. "I mean, shouldn't it still be cold?" Davis scoffed, though his expression remained taut. "Just keep moving, Mills. It's probably a geothermal fissure or something. Heat trapped in the earth." But he too kept looking around, his jaw clenched tight. As we descended further, the path narrowed, forcing us to hunch down as the ceiling dipped lower. The walls seemed to curve inward, and the ground began to slope even steeper. The air grew heavier, thick with a smell that was hard to define, a mix of wet earth and something almost rotten. Every few steps, a faint grinding noise rumbled, a distant echo that hummed in the background like a low grovel. There was no obvious signs of danger, yet a growing unease twisted in my gut. The walls seemed to pulse slightly the longer you stared. I reached out, touching the stone as we passed. It was oddly soft and slick beneath my gloved fingertips. I pulled my hand back, wiping the liquid quickly on my coat. But the sensation lingered. Feels weird, doesn't it?" Mills whispered, his voice barely audible. "Like we're not supposed to be here." "Keep quiet," Haynes hissed, though his voice was strained. He glanced at me, something pleading in his eyes. "Father, do you feel anything strange here?" I took a breath, steadying myself. "There's something here," I murmured. "But let's just keep our focus." They nodded, but I saw their apprehension deepen. We pressed on in silence, each step echoing through the hollow passage, a relentless descent into the unknown. And behind us, the cave walls groaned, as if watching and waiting with a patient yearning. As we pushed down, the silence between us grew heavier in tandem with the walls closing in on us. Ahead, far deeper in the cave, a faint throb pulsed through the air, a slow, steady vibration that seemed to resonate through my head. I couldn't place it. Perhaps the sound of gushing water pulsating from somewhere deep within, but that doesn't feel right. Do you feel that?" Mills asked, his voice cracking. He'd been quiet for some time, but now his face was pale, eyes darting over his shoulder every few seconds. Sweat glistened on his brow despite the chill that lingered in the tunnel. "Just keep moving," Sergeant Davis barked, though his voice was shallow with his own apprehension. "Nothing's here but rock. Keep your head on straight." But Mills seemed to barely hear him. He stopped, his breathing offbeat, and his gaze went distant, fixed on some invisible point in front of him. I reached out, placing a hand on his shoulder, feeling his muscles tense beneath my grip. "Mills," I said softly. "Stay with us." He blinked, looking up at me with wide, terrified eyes. I don't think I'm supposed to be here, Father. I feel like something's looking at me. Something I left behind." His hand trembled as he touched his forehead, muttering to himself. "I don't know why how could I have?" "What do you see?" I asked, though my stomach churned, sensing the weight of the horror he was holding. "It's her," he whispered, voice trembling. "My little girl. She's looking at me. But her face. His hand shot to his mouth, stifling a gasp. His eyes went wide, pupils dilated, as if he were witnessing something unspeakable in the shadows. I could see the fear in him intensify, his gaze wild, darting back and forth as though tracking an unseen presence in the air. She's just standing there," he whispered, his voice cracking. "But there's something wrong. Her skin's pale, like she's been dead for days. Her eyes are... Oh God, no, no, no." "Private?" Davis snapped, his voice louder this time. "Snap out of it." But Mills only whimpered, his body trembling as if caught with a fever. She's asking me why I left. Why I left her alone. She's asking why I wasn't there for her when she was sick. Sweetie, I was deployed. I tried, but..." His voice faded, eyes wide with panic as he seemed to peer deeper into the shadows. He swayed on his feet, his breathing ragged, and in that moment, I saw something break in him, something primal and terrified. His gaze turned inward, and I felt a pulse of dread shoot through me as he spoke again. "She wants me to end it, to end all of it." His voice had taken an eerie hollow tone. "She says I need to carve her back into me, to feel what she felt, to make up for what I've done." "Mills?" I gripped his shoulder, but his skin was clammy, unresponsive, his mind trapped somewhere I couldn't reach. "Whatever you're seeing isn't real. You're here with us. Don't let it take you." But he wasn't listening. His hand drifted toward his belt, where a hunting knife gleamed faintly in the dim light. His face twisted, a horrible pained grimace, as though he was caught between agony and a sick, twisted desire to give in. She's saying it's the only way," he murmured. "If I just cut deep enough, I can take her place. Maybe then. The throb around us grew louder, pulsing in rhythm with his words. It reverberated through the walls, a sinister vibration that seemed to pulse along with his heartbeat, driving his breaths into shallow gasps. I could feel it now, a faint humming beneath my skin, as if something in the depths of the earth was responding, reaching out to him with invisible fingers, pulling him closer to the darkness within himself. "Mills, don't," Haynes said, his voice barely above a whisper, fear choking his words. "You're not alone, okay? Whatever you're seeing, it's not real. It's the cave. It's messing with your head. Don't listen to it." But Mills's expression remained fixed, a horrific blend of grief and resignation, his eyes lost to whatever horrors he alone could see. His grip tightened on the knife, and his gaze shifted between each of us as if we were strangers. Something malevolent flickered behind his eyes, a darkness taking root, curling its tendrils around him. "She wants me to bring you all with me," he said softly, his eyes empty and cold. "She says we all deserve it." He raised his knife, and I saw the slight tremor in his hand as he aimed it at his own throat, his gaze turning inward again, lost to his private nightmare. Without hesitation, I grabbed Mills's arm, my fingers tightening around his wrist to stop him from lifting the blade any higher. I could feel the violent shudder of his body under my grip, his muscles straining as if caught in some dark trance. His eyes were mild, rimmed with distress and desperation, fixed on some terrible vision beyond my sight. "Father, help me," he whispered, but his plea was swallowed by the cavern walls. And around us, the pulsing sound only goaded him on. I tightened my grip on Mills, feeling the tremors racking his body as he clutched the knife, poised under his own throat. His eyes were distant, unfocused. He was muttering under his breath, fragments of sentences, each more desperate than the last. "Father, please," he rasped, his voice barely his own. "She's calling me. She says I need to." "No," I interrupted, my voice steady, though I felt the bitterness of woeful inadequacy seeping down into my soul. I drew in a deep breath, reaching for words that I prayed would hold power. "God Almighty, Lord of Hosts," I began, my voice low but resolute. "Banish this darkness from his mind. Cleanse him of this evil." Mills twitched violently as I spoke, his eyes rolling back for a moment before he shuddered, clutching his head. His hand dropped the knife, and he began to curl up, his face slick with sweat. But as I continued the prayer, his features softened, the manic light in his eyes dimming, replaced by something fragile, barely holding on. Holy Father, I ask for your light in this place of shadow. I ask for your strength to guide this man, for your mercy to protect him. Shield him from this darkness, hold him close to your grace, deliver him from evil. The words spilled out of me, fervent and desperate, and I felt the walls themselves recoil from the sound. The pulsing throb that echoed deeper in grew louder, sharper, each beat shuddering through the ground beneath us, almost as if in protest. Mills twitched, his face contorting, his mouth opening and closing as if fighting to speak. But his eyes remained haunted, his lips moving silently as though wrestling with voices only he could hear. "Father," he gasped, his voice thick with fear. It's still here. I can feel it, clawing inside me. It's angry, so angry." I gripped his shoulder tighter, refusing to let go. "I know, but you're stronger than it. Listen to my voice, not to its lies. You're still here, with us, with me." Around us, the cave seemed to breathe, a low groan vibrating through the walls as if we disturbed something that had long slumbered. A faint, foul wind stirred, carrying the sharp, acrid scent of sulfur and death. I felt the air tighten, pressing in on us, the very stone resenting my prayer. "Do you hear that?" Davis softly muttered. He glanced down the passage ahead, where the walls grew narrower. His gaze turned distant, his head tilting slightly as if listening to some type of sweet song. Haynes stared transfixed, his own eyes glassy and unfocused. "It's beautiful," he murmured. "Do you see it, Davis? The light." Davis nodded slowly, a strange smile creeping across his face. "Yes, it's calling us, down there. It's..." "Wait!" I said sharply, but they ignored me, stepping forward in unison, almost as if they were sleepwalking. I kept my hands on Mills, who had begun to shiver violently, his eyes darting toward Davis and Haynes with a growing panic. "No," he croaked, his voice hoarse. They can't go down there. Don't let them." "Davis, Haynes," I called, but they didn't turn back, didn't even acknowledge me. They walked deeper into the tunnel, following some invisible beacon, their footsteps steady and unwavering. Mills clawed at my hand, his voice frantic. They're walking into it, Father. They're walking right into it." A cold dread filled me as I watched the two soldiers disappear into the shadows, moving with a mechanical calm. I could hear them murmuring to each other, their voices faint. "Do you see it?" Davis was saying, his voice a strange mixture of awe and reverence. "It's so warm. I can feel it, like a heartbeat." "Yes," Haynes replied, his voice equally entranced. It's been waiting for us, hasn't it? All this time." "Father, please," Mills whispered, his face contorted in cold sweat. "Don't let them go any deeper. It's feeding on them. It's pulling them in." I squeezed his shoulder, feeling his pulse racing beneath my hand, erratic and panicked. "Stay with me, Mills. Hold on to your faith, your strength. Whatever we're facing, we'll face it together." But as I looked down the darkened tunnel, the faint light from Davis and Haynes' flashlights faded into the depths. Mills gripped my arm, his eyes wild and wide, but somehow steady, as if he'd found some last flicker of strength within himself. "Father," he rasped, pulling me close. You need to go. You have to find them. Bring them back." I shook my head, reluctant to leave him behind. "Mills, I can't just leave you here. We'll go together." He forced a pained smile. "No, you need to go without me. I'll be fine. I can hold my ground here," he said, his gaze distant, a shadow of uncertainty flitting across his face. "I'll survive, but they won't if you don't find them." I hesitated, feeling the pulse of trepidation deepen in my stomach. but his grip on my arm was firm, his gaze insistent. He was right. Every second we stayed here, the others drifted further into whatever nightmare lay ahead. I gave him a nod, murmured a quick blessing, and left him curled up in the flickering half-light as I ventured further into the cave. The narrow path twisted downward, deeper than I thought possible. The walls closed in, damp and pulsing with awful warmth. I quickened my pace, calling out their names, but only my own voice echoed back, swallowed quickly by the oppressive dark. Just as panic began to claw its way into my chest, I caught a flicker of movement ahead. A figure, small and pale, stepping out from the darkness. It was a child, barefoot and thin, with snow-white skin and hair that shimmered like gold. He couldn't have been more than 7 or 8, clad in an oversized white shirt. His eyes held a peculiar brightness to them, an unsettling mix of innocence and wisdom that was entirely wrong for someone so young. He looked up at me with a faint smile, a smile that was warm, inviting, yet somehow wrong. "Hello, Father," he said softly, his voice lilting, almost musical. "You're looking for your friends, aren't you? But it's too late. They're in the process of leaving us." I felt a cold stab of anxiety pierce my chest. "What do you mean? Where are they?" The child's smile widened, his eyes darkening with something almost playful. "They're lost. They were afraid, Father. They wanted something to cling to, but you left them, just like you left Mills." His words twisted inside me, an accusation that felt like a blade sinking deep. "Mills wanted me to go on," I said, my voice faltering slightly. "But he asked because he knew you wanted to leave him," the child replied, his tone soft, coaxing. "Mills wanted comfort, Father. He wanted someone to stay by his side, to hold him through the fear. You left him alone, and now he's found his way out." I staggered, horror dawning as I understood his meaning. "You're lying. Mills is okay." The child tilted his head, his expression both sympathetic and eerily amused. "You'll see. You left him to die, and now he's gone. He's not the first you've left, is he, Father?" I clenched my jaw, fighting the urge to recoil. The child's words cut deep, touching on wounds I hadn't known were there, wounds I thought I'd forgotten. "You've sacrificed much, haven't you?" the child continued, his voice gentle now, inviting. "A life of loneliness, the vows you took, the vow of chastity, the vow to remain alone in the name of God. No wife, no children, a man who gives everything only to receive nothing in return." His words sank into me, each one twisting with a dark familiarity. I'd spent countless nights wrestling with that emptiness, praying for strength, trying to fill a hole I could never speak aloud. "You deserve peace, Father," the child whispered, stepping closer. "You've served enough. God sees your suffering. He wants you to rest. He wants you to be free, to find comfort. If you let go, if you just let go, He'll welcome you with open arms. A martyr, a true saint." He reached for my hand, his touch unnaturally cold. "If you end it now, God will still love you. He'll forgive you, and you'll never be alone again." My heart pounded, and I felt the weight of his words pressing into me, filling me with a strange, almost seductive numbness. The endless years of service, of sacrifice, of feeling adrift in a world I could only watch from the outside. It all loomed before me, magnified in his gaze. The child smiled, his expression achingly beautiful and sinister, his eyes glowing with that unnatural light. "Take comfort, Father," he murmured. "There's peace waiting, if you'll only reach for it." I stared down at him, my hand trembling in his icy grip. The pulsing throb in the walls seemed to synchronize with my own heartbeat, a steady, relentless rhythm urging me to give in, to find the release he promised. The urge to surrender, to let go, tugged at me, tempting me with a potent, honeyed sweetness. My hand, still caught in the child's cold grip, trembled. I felt his promises sinking into me, filling every hollow place, every forgotten ache, each whispered with a gentle cruelty that coaxed me toward surrender. But deep within, something resisted, an ember that refused to extinguish. Slowly, I reached into my pocket and felt the familiar weight of my weapon, my rosary. Closing my eyes, I took a steadying breath. I clutched the first beat between my fingers and began to pray, my voice a murmur beneath the oppressive presence. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. The child's face darkened, his smile faltering as he watched me. Father? He said, his voice soft, a trace of warning in his tone. You're clinging to something that can't help you here. Those words, they're meaningless. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. A faint twitch flickered in his expression, and his grip on my hand tightened painfully. You don't have to do that, Father, he hissed, his voice softening to a venomous murmur. You're wasting your time. God won't hear you here, and she doesn't care. Pray for us, sinners, now and at the hour of our death. The boy's face began to twist, his soft features stretching and contorting, his skin paling to a deathly yellow. His eyes grew darker, almost cavernous, swallowing any semblance of humanity. Its childlike limbs elongated, thin and bony, with its small hands growing into long, claw-like fingers. The thing's mouth twisted into an obscene grin, revealing sharp, uneven teeth that glistened wetly in the dim light. I stumbled back, clutching the rosary to my chest as the creature stood before me, now a hideous, twisted apparition of what he at once appeared to be. You think you can resist me? The voice that came from his mouth was no longer that of a child. It was a guttural, grating growl, resonating with a power that shook the very air. The walls seemed to tremble, responding to his words as if they too were part of him, a living, breathing extension of his will. You're standing in my flesh, priest, he sneered, gesturing to the walls around us. You walk through my veins, feel my breath in the stones, hear my pulse in the dark. This is my body, and you are nothing but a morsel within it. The walls seemed to close in around me, their surfaces undulating subtly, taking on a sickening organic quality. The faint pulsing sound echoed louder, its rhythm a slow, hungry beat. You and your friends will never leave, he continued, his voice dripping with malice. I will consume every one of you, swallow you whole, and bury you in the depths of my being. Its form rippled, growing larger, filling the cavern with its grotesque presence. Shadows writhed around it like tendrils, reaching toward me with claws that seemed to scrape the very air. I felt an intense, crushing weight pressing down on my body. But then, with a single sneer, it vanished, dissipating like smoke into the void. Silence fell, thick and heavy. I took a shaky breath, clutching my rosary, forcing myself to focus, to stay grounded. Just as my mind settled, I saw them, David and Haynes, standing at the edge of a narrow drop deeper in the tunnel, their backs to me, their faces turned downward. They were muttering to themselves, their voices low, strained, as though speaking to something just below them. Davis! I called out, stepping toward them, my voice echoing in the silence. He didn't respond. His eyes were vacant, unfocused, staring into the pit below. In one hand, he held his rifle, the barrel tilted toward his jaw, his finger resting lightly on the trigger. Haynes stood beside him, clutching a knife, the blade pressed to his wrist, his hand trembling. I felt a cold wave of horror wash over me as I realized what they were about to do. No! I cried, rushing forward, but they seemed oblivious to my presence, their faces twisted in silent agony, their expressions lost to some invisible torment. Mother, Davis whispered, his voice cracking, tears streaming down his face. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. I didn't want to. I can't live with it anymore. Haynes, his voice soft, distant, echoed his pain. "I'll see you soon, Sam. I'll make it right. I'll make it right." "Stop!" I shouted, my voice desperate, my hands reaching for them. "You don't have to do this. Whatever you're seeing, it isn't real. This place is lying to you." They faltered, just for a moment, but the darkness around them seemed to throb in time with their despair, pulling them back, feeding on their guilt, their pain. "Davis? Haynes?" I said, my voice trembling but firm. "Listen to me. You are not alone. Whatever you're seeing, whatever you're hearing, it's a lie. I'm here. We're in this together." For a brief, fragile moment, they seemed to hesitate, their hands loosening, their weapons lowering. But the shadows deepened, as though the cave itself was watching, waiting, hungry for their surrender. Before I could stop him, Davis squeezed the trigger. The rifle's report echoed deafeningly through the cave, reverberating off the walls in a single heart-wrenching note that seemed to shudder through my entire being. I watched, helpless, as he crumpled forward, his body folding onto the cold stone, his eyes glassy and distant, his lips parted in an expression of unfathomable grief. The darkness around him seemed to twist with satisfaction, engorging as if absorbing his very essence. Then, as his body relaxed, he tumbled downward. "Davis," I whispered, but he was already gone. Haynes, now standing alone, trembling and dazed, pressed the blade against his wrist. He sliced through. Blood flowed immediately, pooling in dark rivulets against the stone, his face pale, his eyes wide and unfocused. He swayed, barely able to keep upright. "No!" I cried, rushing to his side, grabbing his wrist to stop the bleeding. My fingers slipped in the warm, slick blood, and I fought to keep a hold on him as he gasped, his gaze swimming with a mixture of horror and confusion. "Haynes, stay with me," I urged, tearing open the emergency kit strapped to his vest. I pulled out the tourniquet, quickly wrapping it around his arm and tightening it until the bleeding slowed. "This place is lying to you, feeding on your fears. Don't let it win. Don't leave us." Haynes blinked, his face contorting in pain as he seemed to come back to himself. His breathing slowed, and his eyes met mine, clear but twitchy. "Father," he whispered, voice shaking. I saw him. I saw my brother. He was calling me." "It's not real," I said, steadying him with one hand on his shoulder. "Whatever you're seeing, whatever you're feeling, it's this place trying to break you. Keep your focus. We're getting out of here. Together." I began to recite a prayer under my breath as I clutched my rosary in one hand, anchoring myself and Haynes in the only protection I knew. As I spoke, Haynes' breathing steadied further, his gaze sharpened, and I could see the light of awareness return to his eyes. He nodded weakly, gripping my hand, as if holding onto a lifeline. Thank you, Father," he whispered, his voice hoarse, broken. Just then, a familiar voice echoed through the chamber, joining my prayer. I looked up, stunned, to see Mills stepping out of the darkness, his face lit with a fierce, defiant faith that seemed to pierce the shadow around us. He was muttering prayers of his own, his lips moving in a steady, relentless rhythm as though each word was a weapon against the dark, his eyes bright with determination. "She told me to come here, Father." With Haynes leaning heavily on my shoulder and Mills at my side, we turned and began to make our way back up the twisted path we had come from. Every step felt like a battle, the cave itself seeming to shift, the walls narrowing, closing in. Dark tendrils of rock and earth creeped inward, scraping against our arms and shoulders, pushing us back with an almost living hostility. "Move faster," Mills urged, grabbing my arm and pulling me forward as the tunnel seemed to twist and distort, bending in unnatural angles. Haynes groaned, his face pale from blood loss, but he kept moving, leaning on both Mills and me. I could feel his strength fading, yet his steps remained steady. A deep, guttural growl rose from the earth, reverberating through the cave like a predator's roar. And the ground beneath us buckled, sending cracks spidering out along the path. The walls writhed, forming ghastly shapes, hands reaching out, mouths gaping open, eyes staring with unseen malice. "Keep praying," Haynes murmured, his voice shaking. "It hates that." With a surge of courage, I raised my voice, shouting the prayers I had once whispered, my voice echoing through the passageway, defying the cave's relentless grip. Mills joined me, his voice strong and unwavering. And Haynes, though weak, whispered along, clinging to the words. "Deliver us, Lord, from every evil," I chanted, my heart pounding as we pushed forward, each step a desperate race against the cavern's grasp. The tunnel seemed to lengthen, stretching out as if mocking our escape. But we pressed on, refusing to surrender to the hungry beast that surrounded us. The walls screamed in rage, a high-pitched, keening sound that set my teeth on edge. But I held tight to my rosary, feeling the warmth of my faith steady me, guiding our way through the twisting, winding path. At last, a sliver of light appeared ahead, faint but unmistakable. The cold, pure light of the outside world spilled into the tunnel, piercing the darkness, summoning our final reserves of strength. We stumbled toward it, each step tearing us from the cavern's grip. Until, with one final lurch, we staggered into the biting Antarctic air. I could feel Haynes' sack against my shoulder, Mills steadying him from the other side, as we struggled to put distance between ourselves and that hellish place. The men were exhausted, their faces pale, their breaths shallow, but we were out. We had made it. Behind us, the entrance to the cave began to shudder, the walls buckling inward, as if drawn by some invisible force. The shadows within twisted and writhed, giving one last violent tremor, before the entire cavern collapsed inward, a rock folding over itself like the closing of a monstrous jaw. The ground heaved and shuddered. A deep, resonant roar shot through the ice and snow as the cavern swallowed itself, disappearing into the earth. "Move!" I shouted, urging Mills and Hines further back as the earth beneath us buckled and lurched, the very land shifting under our feet. We scrambled up a ridge, the snow clinging to our boots, the biting cold tearing into us. We barely made it to the top of the ridge when a powerful quake rippled through the ground, an immense tremor that nearly knocked us off our feet. Below, the ground where the cave had been began to sink. Snow and rock fell into the abyss, as if dragged by some unspeakable hand. I watched, awestruck and horrified, as the earth closed in over the spot, leaving nothing but an empty patch of snow and jagged rock. The throbbing hum that had haunted us faded, replaced by the full silence of the frozen wasteland. Mills held his head, his face pale. "God, it's like it was never there." Haynes, his arm still bound tightly by the tourniquet, gave a slow shaky nod. "Just gone." We stood there, shivering in the cold, the reality of what had just happened sinking in. The cave, the presence within, it was all buried, hidden beneath the ice, as if nature itself had decided to seal away that unspeakable terror. After a long, silent moment, I placed a hand on Haynes' shoulder and nodded toward the distant lights of the base camp. "Come on," I said quietly. "Let's get you some medical attention." The trek back to base was a somber one. None of us spoke, each of us lost in our own thoughts, our own memories of what had transpired. I led the way, clinging to the faint light of my faith, feeling its warmth steady me against the bitter wind that clawed at us, the chill more biting than ever. When we finally reached the base, Colonel Beckett was waiting for us, his face unreadable. He studied each of us in silence, his gaze lingering on Haynes' blood-soaked arm and the distant look in Mills's eyes. Without a word, he gestured for medics to take the two men, and I watched as they led Haynes and Mills away, their expressions wary. The Colonel and I were left standing alone in the freezing night, his gaze sharp and searching as he turned to me. "Well?" he asked, his voice low, steady. "What happened down there?" I took a deep breath, struggling to find the right words. How could I describe what we've seen, what we'd felt? How could I explain the cave that had nearly swallowed us, the unholy presence that had lingered inside? It was. I hesitated, finally meeting his gaze. It was something evil, Colonel. Something beyond our understanding. I don't know what you expected us to find, but whatever that was, it's better left buried. The Colonel's jaw tightened, but he nodded slowly, his eyes unreadable. And the sergeant? Davis didn't make it, I said quietly, feeling the weight of those words settle heavily on my shoulders. But Mills and Haynes. I paused, glancing back toward the med bay where they were being treated. They'll recover, physically at least. He nodded again, his expression softening just a fraction. I'm sorry, Father. I didn't know it would turn out like this. Neither did I replied, clasping my hands, my fingers brushing the rosary that still hung around my fingers. But it's over now. Whatever was in that place, it's gone now. The Colonel watched me for a moment, his eyes filled with the weight of the question he'd never ask. He didn't believe in the supernatural, but even he could sense that we'd faced something else. Thank you, he said finally, his voice softer than I'd ever heard it. As I prepared to leave Antarctica, I felt an odd sense of peace mixed with sorrow. The darkness in that cave had nearly claimed us, but we had survived. And as I boarded the plane, I whispered one last prayer. A plea that whatever evil had lain beneath the ice would stay sealed, forgotten, hidden from the world, for all time. May 13th, 1986, midst of World War III. My name is that of a war criminal. For now, you can call me Collector 662. I was forbidden to speak about my profession in any capacity. All of us were. We knew what would happen, that one final action that was supposed to unlock our deep-set fears of reprisal. There was no going off book. We were obedient, and we were silent. If we did what we were told, we were handsomely rewarded. Everything we could ever want. All we had to give in return was our compliance. So, why did I run away? It's a long story, one that I'll try to put into words here. No matter what I say though, it will never describe the full extent of what we did. That part of my life where I did some of the most terrifying, inhumane things a person could possibly do, and saw things that would mentally break a mind of stone, is desperately trying to be sealed away forever in the deepest corners of my being. It always breaks free and floats back to the surface, shaking me at the quick of everything that I was. I remember wishing that it would stop, but that was just wishful thinking. It would always be a part of me, whether I liked it or not. To be frank, I've been wanted for a couple of months now. These people don't want me silent, imprisoned, or even dead. It's a whole other reason that I'll get to. For someone in my position, you can never be too safe. You keep a low profile, stay away from public spaces, use fake names, and change your appearance. Most of all, you don't stop moving. Staying in one spot for long is a fucking death sentence. I've got a place to hold up in. They'll be here eventually, but I'll be long gone. Better yet, I'll be someone new. I'm going to tell you everything I know. How I became involved, what my job entailed, everything we did. I will be blunt. This is 100% unadulterated. It's the truth and nothing but the truth. There is no point in lying anymore. The world doesn't know what's happening, but soon they will. I hope you're still listening, but I'm not going to waste any more time. Here it is. Let's wind the clocks back to 1967. I was a young man. Of course, that fact alone perked Uncle Sam's ears up. I should have been in college working towards some sort of overall life achievement. Instead, I was plucked right off the street, alongside millions of other unfortunate souls, to go die in some bumfuck jungle. Now that I think back, it's not like it was a fucking surprise anyway. I'm an American man. Going to war is practically a rite of passage. See, I was at a point in life where a man has grown just enough to feel something for his country, but hasn't yet grown out of that mindset that it's a bunch of bullshit. It was rough, with a few close calls here and there. In Vietnam, the culture shock alone was a nightmare to deal with. That combined with the heat, the constant rain, all of the things that the enemy used as a weapon to grind us down mentally. It was a bad time. I remember being pretty low. It's not like we were getting any love back home. The news coverage and shit we got was nothing short of propaganda. They'd paint us to be the good guys, but we were the fucking bad guys in this war. Things like that take a toll on you, but not that much to do what we did. My squad was losing it. We were being torn apart from all sides, and all hope was gone. We went from being a ragtag group of go-getters to a single desperate mindset. Kill or be killed. That was our plan. We were doing whatever we had to do to survive. It didn't matter who or what they were. We'd fuck them up. We'd burn their homes and villages to the ground. We'd slaughter their families, and we'd make their own lives worse than death if we had to. I don't remember exactly how it began, or when it ended. I think the first person I saw die was a woman. A young woman around 24, 25 maybe. This younger kid shoved a whole Bowie knife down her throat. He pushed it in deep. Slowly, he inched it back out. And the woman was like a river. So much blood flowed out of her mouth. The look on his face was fucking terrifying, man. It was like he was in some strange, dreamlike state. His eyes were blacked out. His pupils huge and dilated to a fucking T. You know that look you get when you're high off your fucking mind? It was like that, but with a different sort of madness on his face. We had all seen that look before. It was our own. We were all fucked in the head after so much time. After that, it was a blur. All I remember was walking through the village, blacking out, then walking some more. I didn't give two shits. I was angry. I was sad. I had no more use for the world, and there was no way in hell that I'd go back to it. This was it. Death or nothing. Next thing I knew, I ended up in some field hospital. We caused quite a ruckus that night. Apparently, I was quite creative with my methods of torture and killing. The whole time, I was laughing like a lunatic. I wasn't sorry though. Of course, it was no surprise when they yelled and spat at me, threw me around a bit, and slung all sorts of creative insults my way. The doctors, nurses, even they all thought that I was done for. All I did was laugh though, even as one of my superiors punched me in the face, causing me to fall to the ground and cough up crimson shit. I was still cackling. My former squad and I lived what we thought was the rest of our days in a damp and dirty makeshift prison. None of us talked to one another. We didn't eat. We didn't sleep. We didn't even count the days with little tally marks on the walls. All of us were zombies, moping around in dazed and dreamlike states. Our brains had shut down completely. It was the first and only time I'd eaten a rat with a little knife I made from a broken off floor panel. I cut into the thing while it was still alive, peeling back the skin and muscle. I saw the juicy insides sloshing around. I sank my teeth in and devoured whatever I could. Diseases were the least of my worries. I was already a disease to the world anyway. With only a day left until our execution, there was a knock at the door. It slowly inched its way open, the first sunlight in ages pouring in. Our clothes were caked with dirt and grime. Our hair went down to our shoulders and itched with bugs, and we were skeletons draped in thin skin. We huddled back against the walls as two gentlemen walked in. The first was the general, acting all smug with the cigar nearly falling out of his mouth. The second was a middle-aged man with a black suit and tie, sunglasses and fedora. He was painfully thin, almost as thin as us. We heard them speak in hushed murmurs to one another. They passed each other all sorts of documents and files. At one point, the general glared at each of us with a look of utter disdain and hatred, but also like he was running a thought through his mind. He turned back to the other man, saying, Now, are you sure? The other man let out a small chuckle. General, trust me, they'll be put to good use. Breathing a hefty sigh, the general shook his head and promptly left our cell, leaving us alone with this stranger. He stepped closer, and we stepped back. It looked like he was analyzing us, sizing us up, figuring out everything that we were. His smile was sadistic, and his eyes were full of mania. I wanted to punch him in the face so hard that he would be a vegetable for the rest of his life. With that aside, I still listened, curious as to what he had in store for us. "My name is Dr. Alexander Graves," he began. "I understand you're responsible for the massacre at Dangming. Your execution is to be carried out tomorrow at the crack of dawn." No one said anything. "I don't particularly feel like wasting your time, so I'll be blunt. You're the absolute worst pieces of shit. You did the worst things you could have possibly done. And to what end? You caused death, civilian death, and not only that." He gazed at my former squad leader, who couldn't keep his hands to himself, and then back to the rest of us. "You should have taken those bullets for yourself." In hindsight, this was stupid of me to say. "We did what we had to do," I said, my mouth opening for the first time in who knows how long. "No," Alexander shook his head, stifling a laugh. "You did what you wanted to. You chose to make yourself more powerful, killing and mutilating those weaker and defenseless than you. You're animals, but that doesn't mean you have to go to waste." Our former squad leader interrupted. "What the hell are you talking about?" "See, my friends and I have a mission. Been working on it for as long as I can remember. In Antarctica, a special place is being constructed. Right now, the government is in the dark about its true intentions, thinking that we're testing products for their wars. No, we're really trying to expand upon science itself. We're trying to create weapons for the future. What we want to use, though, are not just any weapons. They're weapons of flesh and blood, man-made beasts designed to kill." The former squad leader's face contorted in disgust. "Look, I don't know what kind of shit you're talking about, but I know I don't want to be a part of this. You aren't the government. We don't owe you shit." "Yes, you do," Alexander said. "Your superiors have already approved it. If you refuse, you've basically given them the go-ahead to come and kill you. This isn't a chance for you to atone for your sins. Frankly, there's no redemption for you. But if this is who you are, then so be it. Join me, and you can unleash yourselves like never before. This is what you want, right? I guarantee you, this isn't like anything you've seen." The more he spoke, the more we realized that he might actually have a point. We were assholes, the lowest of the low. We didn't have anything to lose. For us, this was a real opportunity. None of us knew what Alexander meant, and it seemed like crazy talk. But if we could finally let loose, unleash our darkest desires on something or someone, then so be it. This was a chance to be part of something greater. We agreed. May 16. 2 unknown vehicles were parked outside my safe house. I felt it necessary to gather my belongings and make my escape. I'm held up in an abandoned factory. It shouldn't be long until they're here again. Luckily, I've got several escape points. Hopefully, it'll be enough. I neglected to mention this new war. A couple months ago, there was a false flag operation in Cuba, intending to paint America like the aggressors. A few things led to another, and lo and behold, we're at war again. Surprise, surprise, it's with Russia. Both countries have nukes. So far, no one's used them yet. We're not going to, at least not yet. The world is going to get a rude awakening soon. It's going to be the end of the world as we know it. Not for the reasons one might think, however. I soon came to realize that my former squad and I were just a small drop in the endless sea of inhuman wrongness. There were hundreds of us, recruited from all over the world. We trained for years to become collectors. Who we worked for was multiple choice. I never learned what they truly called themselves. It was some ancient alien language I couldn't ever hope to understand. For the purposes of what they stood for, we'll call them Project VR VR-001. They had a mission, you see, one that could take advantage of an ongoing man-made conflict foretold to bring about the death of humanity from generations past. That false flag operation in Cuba? The reason why the world is in shambles? Why the world's two strongest countries are clamoring to be the ones on top, even if the rest of the world is dead and buried? We did that. That chain reaction that had the exacting effect we craved. Maybe humanity could just do it themselves. If not, then we'll step in. Why? Why would we want all this chaos? Well, Project VR-001 was all about bringing the death of humanity. All so new dominant life forms can rule. There was some cult-like group at the top that were trying to unleash some ancient prophecy that told them exactly how to do this. A prophecy that they've had for centuries. It's a prophecy in which humanity has to die so that a new dominant life form will arise to take our place. And with that new race of gods, there will be a new golden age where everything is done the right way, where only those worthy of being in this higher plane will live. Before I go, let me say that there are things in this world that the common man can never hope to understand. Things that have no right to exist. People try to gain some logical high ground that they created in their minds with what they call facts, logic, and common sense. They explain the weird and mysterious ways with big words and long drawn-out explanations that make their followers go, ooh and ah, denying every notion that there's anything else beyond that because it's not realistic enough for their own liking. Project VR-001 would laugh in their faces. For them, plain boring old science wouldn't suffice. They had to go deeper. Those unspeakable rituals they used, tapping into the unknown, looking beyond the veil, bending and breaking the rules of reality to their liking. We blended it all into one noxious mixture. It gave everything. We created life like never before. But we weren't going to stop there. These were some of the most brilliant minds of this world. Minds that should have never been allowed to think. To create these things, what we needed was pure organic material. Blood, skin, bone, muscle, tissue, guts, nerves. Just walking meat of all kinds. I was part of one of many teams who provided that. Project VR-001 didn't want fake synthetic nonsense. These things were real. We couldn't just manufacture the required meat ourselves, so they'd get us to round up a victim. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that humanity is a resource to be tapped into, and it's one that goes to waste when it's not taken advantage of. We had a variety of methods for our job, ranging from the subtle to violent. After abduction and injection of the chemical that made them go nighty-night, they'd be transported to the base in Antarctica. We didn't just deal with live humans though. It could be any living creature. You know, you had your rabbits, your foxes, your deer, your dogs, your cats, you name it. I could only imagine people's faces when their beloved pets were gone. We'd get as many live ones as we could. They're in a better condition anyway. The better the condition, the better the quality of flesh that you get. All of our subjects, humans or otherwise, were kept in cages or crates. Until we had all we needed. Sometimes we had to put humans and animals together. Lots of accidents. You can probably imagine the smell. Rancid, stinking, stale. So many people, so many animals in such a cramped space. I've never smelled anything worse in my life. Even I smelled better as a prisoner of war. But really, the only thing worse was the noise. It was a dreadful cacophony of suffering between all of our permanent residents. The humans made the most noise. They yelled, they cried, a lot of them pissed and shat themselves. And the children, oh boy the children, they would never shut the fuck up. Usually, they were the first in line to get some modicum of peace and quiet. The animals were always none the wiser to their fates. And before they knew it, it was time. To be honest, I never knew the exact process required to create them. It was only for the scientists, bioengineers, and other fucks behind those closed doors to know, and for us The measly collectors and the cattle to the slaughter if anything went haywire, to never find out. Our only job at that point was to throw them inside and leave, maybe guard the door if some parent tried to be a hero and save their kid. However, we did get to see the end products. Initially, when we were still in the early testing phases, most of our creations were hybrids. Cats with foxes, pigs with wolves, humans with dogs. You get the point. A lot of them died a few minutes into their new lives. If an experiment failed, I and a few others had to go in and retrieve them. Their bodies were a mess, contorted into unnatural shapes and sizes. Their guts had melted together or spilled out in pools of fluids. Their skin would either be stretched, different colors like patchwork ice cream, or gone altogether. Sometimes they just lay there, their bodies still and lifeless. Every now and again, their dead eyes would open up, as if to mock us, their keepers, for wasting our time with something so foul and which yielded no results. Yeah, our job was to dispose of them. Some survived though, and they were used as a basis for moving forward. With time, we got better and better. The scientists still counted each failure as a victory. They would study and evaluate the results of the experiments, taking everything into account and trying to replicate the results if they were beneficial. If the experiments didn't go well, they would try to figure out what went wrong and attempt to fix it. Through trial and error, they got better at it. We are able to progress to totally new and original creatures. Some of them you couldn't even tell what they originally were anymore. You'd have to go in with your own eyes to truly understand what we were dealing with. They were imbued with the desire to kill, but they were also impervious to any outside harm, essentially invincible. Rapidly, they would evolve and mutate in any way they needed. Even if you blew them to smithereens, they would still find a way to come back. Let's just say no human could be in the same room as them without being torn to shreds. Sometimes we'd watch them fight, which wasn't a problem since they couldn't die. You could see the stress building and exploding out of them at all times. I'm going to describe some of them, not all. They created tens of hundreds of them, and as I record this, there's more to come. I don't have all day, so here are some notes on the ones that made an impact on me. Subject 9. A 9-foot-tall bipedal rat. Once an ordinary street rat. Long snout, floppy diluted tongue, large ears, expanded eyes, muted pink tail, razor-sharp teeth and claws, gray fur, skinny and bony, makes high-pitched squeaks, hisses, screams, chattering of the teeth and howls, horrendous stench, mix of roadkill, raw sewage and old cheese, extremely feral, will attack absolutely anything, can tunnel underground at astonishing speeds, carries diseases like rabies, typhus, leprosy, bubonic plague, and cholera. Subject 18. A humanoid, once a little girl named Johanna, tall, about 11 feet, smooth inky black skin, no scent, has 2 large flap-like ears, long and gangly limbs that can change length at will. Various eyes cover its body, unable to blink, extraordinarily patient, capable of waiting years, hypnotic gaze, puts victims into a trance, a form of paralysis, mimics voices and sounds, like a hush, and are higher pitched than they should be, can go without sustenance for months. Project 25. A 5-foot-tall bat-like creature, once a fruit bat caught in India, rather small compared to the others. Gray ashy body, 2 eyes, huge black pupils, short snout, razor-sharp fangs, tall ears, 2 flexible wings, long span, feet with sharp tails, able to hang upside down, makes low-pitched roars and hisses, nocturnal, ambush predators. Subject 66. A humanoid, once a mentally ill patient named Richard Neller, exceptionally pale skin, black hair, large black eyes, black lips, wide open mouth with teeth and gums protruding outwards, like a maniacal grin. Never stops laughing, ever. Extremely strong, able to break down doors and walls, can throw cars, able to perform incredible feats of agility, When inflicted with damage, it makes an extremely eerie screaming noise. Mouth elongates and pupils enlarge, contorts into unnatural positions. Subject 81. A large canid, almost humanoid. Once a guard dog, long snout, big ears, blackened eyes that do not move, always in the middle. Sharp jagged teeth, tongue is long and floppy, dripping black substance. A long tail, black fur, loud howling, vicious, will never give up. Limb manipulation and reattachment. Subject 104. A humanoid, once a teenager named Grant Buckner, 9 feet tall, gangly limbs, long torso, a disproportionately narrow skull, a pair of 2 small eyes, long and twisted claws for fingers, an extremely small mouth, a single claw for a tongue, high metabolism, will eat absolutely anything, even inanimate objects, never stops eating. Subject 333. An artificial sentient supercomputer housing all of Project VR-001's top secret files and documents. Once one of Project VR-001's own Kenneth Waterford, top scientist that betrayed his own, released files quickly contained, and in an iconic twist of fate, became Project VR-001's guardian against breaches from external parties. The image provided is not all of them, just one of his many vessels. There are so many more, but you get the picture. Maybe I've had time to correct my mistakes. I'll tell you this, they were never mistakes to begin with. I knew what I was doing. Does that make me the bad guy? Yes. Yes, it does. At the same time, though, I felt like something was breaking inside me. No, it wasn't as if I was suddenly growing a conscience and morals. It was more like I was a shell. If I didn't care about Vietnam, I most certainly didn't care now. The would-be subjects screaming for help, their sad puppy dog eyes staring back at me. In me, there was nothing. I didn't even have moments of hesitation. I wasn't some underdog who tried to step up to the big mean villains in an act of selfless heroics. I didn't give a shit about that. By this point, I had lost my mind completely. Again, I was angry. At who? I don't know. Project VR-001? My fellow collectors? The creatures? The world? I didn't shoot up the place. I didn't kill Alexander or any of the other hit honchos up top. This wasn't some action movie. I just ran. I had nowhere to go. But it felt so good. Like a weight off my shoulders. The snow had picked up, but I didn't care. I ran until I couldn't anymore. What I did do was climb aboard one of the cargo ships that came by every now and again. I just thought, fuck it, and hopped on. Being a collector all this time, I received the necessary training to become practically invisible. That's what I did. Somehow, no one ever found me. I rode out the huge waves and terrifying storms. When we finally arrived in America, I hopped off. I've laid low ever since. Are you expecting me to be a hero here? Warn the whole world of Project VR-001? Expose their activities? Lead a resistance to try and take them down? Why would I do that? It's all pointless exercises. I'm just telling you what I experienced and how I feel about it. Maybe I should have stayed, but something was compelling me to break free. I'm so conflicted. I don't want to break free. I don't think I'm gonna be on my best behavior for long. There's literally nothing we can do to stop Project VR-001. Don't even bother trying to kill their creations. You can't. They'll mutate, evolve into forms unknown to nature itself. Nukes won't do anything. In fact, they might just speed up the process. A global catastrophe is coming. It's not a matter of if, but when. As humans, we like to think we're invincible, that we can take anything on. But there are things in this world, in this universe, that humble us, make us look tiny, like little insects. We're nothing. You, me, we're completely and utterly nothing. They're tracking me every which way. In fact, those same 2 cars from 3 days ago just parked outside. I'm seeing 4 collectors get out. I remember them all: 46, 880, 232, and 78, and I know exactly what they want to do to me. All I can say is, keep your loved ones close. Hug them tight. Tell them how much you love them. Personally, I don't have anyone to love. I'm pretty much alone in that fact though. Something's coming. A conflict unlike anything the world has ever seen before. No one's prepared. It seems like the last chapter of humanity is now. Sometimes, back in Antarctica, when I was walking past all those awful creatures, I just stop and stare at them. For some reason, that made me feel a connection to them. No matter how different we were, separated by bulletproof glass and barbed wire, they and I were at least on the same wavelength. Pain is all we know. I've tried committing suicide. I can't, though. Not that I don't want to. It's just that I can't. I don't want to stay alive. Something's stopping me. Death is waiting for me. But it seems like he'll have to keep waiting. The entries of hit researcher, observer, patriarch, and glorious leader into the dear future, Dr. Alexander Graves. March 20, 1971. Did I ever dream of the day in which we would be truly united as a world? What a silly question. Of course I did. I mean, don't we all? It was never as if my dreams were too far-fetched, unable to be accomplished in a single lifetime. All I wanted was to show that there was a better way, one in which all that was needed was an ideology of unity, a common goal and common truth. My dream was just that, simple, but I also knew it's very complex. The way I saw it was to be unified in the search for what makes humanity humanity. It goes beyond the things we can see and the things we can hear. It goes beyond your own kind. People like to propagate the notion that the world is a mess and that nothing can be done to save it. Even if something goes slightly awry, it's the end of the world as we know it. To me, that's a giant cancer that keeps growing and growing and growing. It needs to be cut off before it consumes everything there is. What's with all the fear-mongering? Why not embrace what we have and what we will have? In my conferences with those men, I made sure my words were as smooth as silk. I spoke prettily but plainly. You'd be surprised at how much you can accomplish with the right amount of balance in the words you utter. Of course, these weren't simple, honest men. You had your presidents, your prime ministers, your monarchs, your generals, all from the same highly exclusive club. I fronted as the head of the South Project, which to them was earth-shattering. Weapons manufacturing, all the guns, bombs, and artillery you can shake a stick at. We were neutral, non-partisan, just some guys with some money, wanting to get the best bang for our buck. We made sure to keep our mouths shut. We were weapons manufacturers for the good guys and the bad guys. It wouldn't have mattered. It was all the same. As long as everyone was paying their bills on time and the price was right, we'd be happy to do business. To make a long story short, they were eager to oblige. That was 2 years ago already. Of course, we have our own agenda to play around with. I call it Project VR001 or Project Venerate a Revolutionary. That's us. The 001 is for our first inquiry into the new way of life. Am I a liar? Yes, I am. But I'm a firm believer of the ends justifying the means. We're not looking to build guns or bombs or artillery. We're looking to bring the world together. We want to break down the barriers, smash the walls, and bring the people together into one gigantic melting pot. When I mean bringing people together though, I'm not talking about one big brotherhood of man. I'm talking about the end of this chapter, and not just humanity, but the animal kingdom in its entirety. Our goal is to create, through biological manipulation, hybridization, and mutation, a truly new dominant race. We're not exactly sure what that'll be yet, but the process is underway. We should be good to go in a few years. November 18, 1975. We have our own little operation down here in Antarctica. This is one of the most expensive projects in history. Money has never been an issue though. Our friends in the States, Britain, Germany, Russia, China, Australia, they keep us on our feet. We do our fair share of weapon supplying, and no one bats an eye. There is nothing suspicious about it. And after all, Antarctica is the one true neutral place on Earth. There are a number of people here, those involved with research, development, and security. I've even created an elite group within our rank, and I call them my collectors. They're all in training, but they'll serve a very special purpose. I'm quite fond of them. Every collector will be very good at what they do. Outsiders will think they're just a bunch of lowly goons working for a weapons company. It almost brings a tear to my eye. What was once a mad idea in the heads of a few is now becoming a reality. The entire world will see Project VR-001, the beautiful life we create. For now, we're focused on smaller things, building our labs, testing our equipment, training, preparing ourselves for what's to come. I'm very proud of what we've accomplished so far. Of course, there are many obstacles ahead of us, but it's time to take those obstacles head on. We will work as a team. There is no room for selfishness. We will always put the good of the project first. For the foreseeable future, this is where I'll be staying, with my new family. I'll be spending the rest of my life right here, in the belly of the earth. No need to travel, at least until the time is right. I have to keep writing though, keep everything fresh. I may need to refer to these in the future. They keep me thinking. June 6, 1978. We've been having some difficulties, but it's nothing to worry about. Rome wasn't built in a day. I foretold there being some kinks to work out. Certain mutations and transformations are not occurring as we have planned. Some subjects are dying on the spot. We can't have that. Our first, the very first, was a convict from Brazil, a criminal, a thief. His name was Francisco Correia. He's dead now. He just couldn't take the heat. I'm not exactly sure if it was his own physiology or his soul, if he wasn't strong enough physically or mentally. I'll never know. A few weeks ago, we finally created a beautiful thing. Well, we thought we did. We were so proud. He was Subject 1, the most unrealistically realistic creature there could have possibly been. A mix between man and dog. His coat was a light gray, his nose a dusky brown like leather. He had large round eyes, and his teeth were sharp. His legs were long, and he could contort and bend into so many different shapes. It was amazing. But one night, his new heart gave out. He just keeled over and died, shaking violently, some kind of white liquidy substance pouring out of his snout. And it keeps happening, and happening, and happening. This isn't supposed to be unrealistic anymore. I don't understand what we're doing wrong. We've been very thorough in our work. I feel like I'm being punished. Where's that greater power staring me down? Do the gods of the past, the gods of the old, the gods of creation and destruction frown upon my work? I've never believed in the gods, but I'm beginning to have my doubts. October 18, 1978. I'm sorry. For the last few months, I've been drinking. I'm not talking about the occasional beer here and there. I mean Alcoholics Anonymous and rehab type drunk. I've been going on my own personal, private little spree. You know, the more I drink, the more I realize what a genius I really am. I can make so many things happen, things that can't be explained, at least to our own rational mind. I've spent so many years searching for that unifying theory, but I keep on failing. It's because I've never gone about it in the right way. I know what I can accomplish. I just need a little help. Do you believe in occultism? Or at least the possibility that there's more than meets the eye? When I say occultism, I don't mean the witch or wizard characters of the past. I mean the true nature of the universe, what our ancestors refer to as gods and spirits, but is really the truth of everything, the real laws of reality. We all want to be closer to those things. That's why people go to temples, churches, mosques, and shrines. Those who are skeptical are just afraid to believe in something more. Feelings of doubt and uncertainty are always just in your head. The heart is a different story. It's always yearning to be something better. I don't need to convince anyone of anything. I'm just going to show everyone what is truly beautiful. We will all be beautiful together. It's all there is. I know what I want. It's what we've all wanted since the beginning of time. I'm going to be a god. I know that I can be one of the beautiful ones, an immortal, all-powerful, and a part of everything. I know that I will be the greatest thing that has ever been. The world, all of it, will be beautiful. I will take us there. On June 4th, 1980. We did it. I can feel the change in the air. We've broken the boundaries. We've surpassed what people thought was impossible. Subject 9 is living and breathing, not dying in a heap on the floor. The collectors brought in the rat from guess where? New York City, of course. Rat Central. It was a runty, emaciated thing, but not for long. You'd be surprised at the rate at which this beautiful creature grows. I'm sure everyone's pleased with themselves. It is my first beautiful creature to achieve real immortality. Of course, it's impossible for it to die. Its mind may say yes, but its body will say no. The body will fix itself in ways unseen by nature, mutate for its survival. It'll be with us for some time now. Many others have already received the same treatment. Already, we're in the hundreds. They're all manners of shapes and sizes, and can do so many wonderful things. Subject 9 carries all sorts of diseases. Subject 18 can put people into a trance. Subject 32 is a walking inferno. Subject 111 can spray pus out of his pores. And get this, Subject 489 loves to crawl into any available orifice and release a viscous, pervading liquid that decays the host from the inside out. One time, I saw the newborn in her cocoon for what seemed like hours, but what was only a few minutes. I saw her writhing around. I saw her screaming and crying. I saw her limbs and wings sprout, her fur and flesh grow. I saw her form. I saw her change. I was in the most beautiful moment in my life, and it's all thanks to my friends, the gods. Isn't it great? I did run into a problem when one of my scientists, Dr. Waterford, tried to seize our files and release them to the public. I couldn't fathom for the life of me why he would do such a thing. He was good, and I was good to him. One day he just broke? Well, what good would executing him have done? I like to take whatever I can get. If he wanted our files so bad, then so be it. He'd become our files. August 31st, 1983. These past few years, a thought has been at the forefront of my mind. What if there was a catalyst? See, this is the era we live in. Back in '62, everyone made a hissy fit about a couple of missiles in Cuba. Then it just ended, and people moved on. Everyone said it was gonna be the end of the world. Vietnam's over. It's done. Except, it isn't. There are all these tiny little conflicts that keep springing up in the area. How could something so small start something so big? Yet something so big start something so small. I want my own Vietnam. Except, bigger. All our lives, we've grown up with the threat of another world war. Everyone remembers hunkering down in their classes, being threatened with the thought of some hypothetical, belligerent plane dropping a huge bomb on their little suburban existences. What if that plane really did drop that bomb? What if humanity did all the work for me? I'm now the largest weapons manufacturer in the world. Everyone would buy weapons from me. In fact, they already are. I will say, it was much easier than I thought. December 30th, 1986. So get this. So back in March, one of my collectors, Daniel Morse, escaped, right? There weren't any bullets exchanged. No high-speed chase on the open snow-covered desert. Nothing. He just vanished without a trace. There is no such thing as without a trace. Everyone leaves something behind. Now that I think about it, Morse did seem off here and there. Not rebellious, just different. He was in a whole other dimension than the rest of his colleagues. One time, I saw him just walk up to Subject 77's cage, placed his head against the chain link, and just stare at the creature in there. 77 tried to intimidate him, but Morse just wasn't having it. My collectors are trained well, maybe a little too well. He did cover his tracks. It was exceedingly difficult to pinpoint his location. I was persistent though. It's my biggest attribute after all. Some of my collectors went out to find him. Apparently, Morse shot 2 of them dead and fled the scene. Alas, nobody's perfect. Morse was ambushed, and though he escaped once more, collectors 46 and 232 brought back something very interesting. It began with, "My name is that of a war criminal. For now, you can call me Collector 662. I knew what this was the second I got the word criminal. He talked all about how he wanted to die, how there wasn't a point in fighting back, and most importantly, how he wasn't going to do anything about it. People like to call me a liar. Wait until you get a load of this. Morse did fight back. It was like one of those Hollywood action movies they used to make. Judging from our surveillance, some woman his age named Melinda came into his life. She inspired him. They grew closer. They tried to expose me and Project VR-001, and they let some unfortunate, misguided souls in their mission, and they failed. Their plan was to use a special bomb they constructed to blow up our black site. It would be a huge explosion and contained some sort of strange compound that would supposedly kill all my subjects permanently. God, it makes me laugh even now. I'm not going to beat around the bush. I hate doing that. Their numbers were either gone down or taken by my beautiful children. I blew Melinda's brains out. And Morse? Let's just say I have another child. My 500th, and I'll make sure to punish it accordingly. It's really Melinda's fault if you think about it. Anyways, with whatever that was out of the way, my friends and I think that it's time. Still no nukes. You have to do everything yourself, huh? October 1st, 1987. This is the last. Here's the plan. I don't want to just unleash all of my children out into the world all willy-nilly. Where's the fun in that? I have something better. So, I've already arranged for a weapons demonstration to be conducted between the President of the United States and the General Secretary of Russia. Remember, I'm neutral, non-partisan. I've been supplying weapons to these fucks since the beginning. They have to play nice, and they probably think that whoever bids higher will get their weapons of the future. But instead, it's time. I will ascend. Goodbye. Aftermath. On October 15th, 1987, the President of the United States and the General Secretary of the Soviet Union, as well as their associates and some top military generals, gathered in Antarctica for the supposed weapons demonstration. Seated inside the black site, yet still chilled to the bone, huddled in their parkas and furred boots, they waited patiently for the reveal of the weapons of the future. When Alexander spoke the words, "And now, I give you the weapons of the future," and the rusted metal doors rose up into the ceiling, the President of the United States, the General Secretary of the Soviet Union, the top military generals, their smiles suddenly dropped. Unable to die and equipped to mutate as needed, some of Alexander's children swam hundreds upon thousands of miles to land, while others flew. Some were even airdropped. Quickly, chaos began to spread as these alien terrors began to wreak havoc against the world, killing anything in their path in various grotesque ways. Humanity quickly began working together for the first time in 5 years. They turned the war effort against the creatures and attempted multiple methods to fight back, but to no avail. The subjects continued to mutate over long stretches of time, and emit intense amounts of radiation, causing entire areas to be uninhabitable. Though some managed to escape, these survivors began to grow tumors and lumps, get pustules, and even more horrible, get limbs and organs and even entire heads and faces to sprout and grow from unnatural locations. Nature itself was working against these people. Finally, in an oh so desperate bit, the first nuclear bomb in decades was dropped on the city of Berlin. This only strengthened the subjects, though it was maddeningly insisted on more being dropped. Effectively, these moves decimated large swaths of land, leaving immense fallout and nuclear winter in their wake. On June 14, 1989, at approximately 10:02 p.m., the last survivor on Earth, Cassie M. Berger, 16, after being backed into a corner, ripped off his gas mask and ran into the horde of subjects in a fit of mania. He was rapidly mutated in a fraction of a second and was devoured in even less time. Alexander Graves remained alive, alone in what used to be Francisco Correia's cell. He injected himself with a syringe containing a special reactant. With a smile etched across his face, he began to mutate. It is so difficult to even fathom.
Ian, didn't you hear the captain calling? Carter asked. I moved my gaze from the notes on my desk and looked in his direction. He was standing by the entrance to my room, hands on his hips. He looked furious and impatient. What's going on? I asked. We have an emergency. HQ wants to send us on a rescue mission. Rescue? Who? I raised my eyebrows. No idea, the briefing's already started. Come on, let's get to the control room. Before I could ask him anything else, he turned and went down the hallway. I arranged my notes neatly and exited my room. The corridor leading down echoed with my footsteps and Carter's own in the distance. The spaceship was big enough for me to still sometimes lose direction, but at least it was equipped with gravitational panels so we could get around more easily without floating and getting disoriented like in the early stages of the simulation. I turned right at the corner and saw Carter stopping in front of the control room door. He turned around and waited for me to get closer. Once I did, he pressed the big square button next to the door, which made it slide sideways. Immediately, we were hit by the sound of murmurs as our other crew members discussed something around the holographic map in the middle. Behind the crew was a row of control panels sitting in front of a huge pane of glass. I glanced at the dark space beyond the glass, filled with hundreds of stars in the distance, unreachable still to mankind. It often made me realize how insignificant we are, and how easily we can get swept away in an instant in this cold abyss, and no one would ever even know. I was shaken back to reality by Captain Adams' stern voice. "Ian, late again. Sit down," he said. The crew consisted of 6 members altogether, and we had mandatory meetings every morning and evening to go through the list of inspections. So when Carter called me for an unexpected meeting at 5 p.m., I knew something must have gone terribly wrong. I sat down and waited for the captain to speak. He said, "Earlier today, there was an incident on board the ISS-14. We don't know what exactly happened, but supposedly there are casualties and Earth lost contact with them. HQ wants us to go there immediately and provide rescue to anyone alive."
But that place is pretty far away.
The team medic Riley said.
It'll take us at least a few hours to get there, and we're not rescue services.
Yeah, but there's no one closer to them than us. Now, I know that this is not our line of work, but it has to be us. We go there, look for any survivors, and go back home. Wait, what about the mining operation? James asked. HQ wants us to put it on hold. Right now, the priority is rescuing the ISS-14 crew and escorting them back home. Fine, I'll start the engine, Hank, the pilot, said. He stood up and went to the control panel with Carter, and the two of them pressed a series of buttons. Every crew member was trained to pilot the ship, but only Carter and Hank could do it outside of any emergency situations. The ship hummed to life, the floor under our feet slightly vibrating. The view outside started rotating to the right, making the stars dance across the window. When it stopped, it was impossible to tell which direction we were facing. However, the pilots somehow knew it from the radar, and we were able to determine which direction to move in. The ship started moving forward slowly, but gained speed gradually. It looked as if we were pinned in one spot, but I knew that with each second passed, we covered miles of the inhospitable vacuum of space. There, Hank leaned in his chair. We should be there in about 3 hours. Well, keep your eyes open, the captain said, and try to see if you can get in contact with him in the meantime. He stood up and left the room. I followed and went back to the crew quarters. I closed the shutters on my window and sat down on my bed. Although some of the crew members enjoyed the unique view from the windows in their rooms, I tended to avoid gazing outside, especially if I was left alone with my thoughts. Staring out into the endless nothingness out there for prolonged periods of time made me feel claustrophobic and trapped. I knew we were relatively close to home, but our planet was only visible as a tiny dot in the distance at any given time, with every other direction around us being infinite miles of empty space. For the first few days, I would glance through the windows towards the Earth every few hours, afraid that our ship would drift away and we'd lose sight of our planet, getting lost forever in the unforgiving cold dark, so unknown to men. I knew, of course, no such thing could really happen, but the nagging feeling wouldn't abate. After a while of sitting on my bed, I went to join Hank and Carter in the control room. The two of them were casually chatting by the control panel when they saw me join and offered me to join in on the conversation. So I was just telling Carter that the guys on the ISS-14 are probably just blackout drunk. Hank chuckled and craned his neck in my direction. What do you think? I don't know. It's strange to just lose contact like that. They might have had a serious issue, I said. Well, whatever the case, we'll find out soon. We're almost there. See that? Carter said and pointed to the window. I squinted and realized that he was pointing at a dot in the distance. As minutes went by, the dot grew closer, and more prominent shapes gradually became apparent. It began to take the shape of a man-made flying object, and I recognized its disproportionately large wings as solar panels reflecting sunlight. It's still there, and it seems still intact, Hank said. He leaned in and pressed a button on the control panel. As he held it like that, he said, "We can see them. Everybody, get down here." In a matter of minutes, everyone was in the control room, and the ISS-14 was a lot closer and bigger, displaying more and more visible details on the structure, like joints, pressurized modules, etc. Adams pressed a button on the control panel and said, "This is the US Collector 03. Does anyone copy?" He released the button and we waited in silence. Nothing but the humming of the ship was heard. Adams pressed the button and spoke again. "This is the US Collector 03. ISS-14. Do you copy?" No response. Adams sighed. "Well, I guess we're going in. Bring us in closer, Hank." "Ian." He looked at me. "Suit up." I gave him a silent nod of agreement and proceeded to the lockers. I donned my suit and put my helmet on. I double-checked if the thrusters on the boots were functioning, refilled the oxygen tank, and made sure everything was tightly secured. Once that was done, I proceeded down to the airlock. Riley was waiting in front and inspected my gear once more to make sure everything was safe.
Alright, you're good to go,
she said, giving me a pat on the shoulder. I pressed the button to open the airlock and stepped inside. In front of me was the second airlock door and a small round window, the final line of defense that separated me from a potentially painful demise. Riley pressed the button again and sealed the door behind me. I attached the safety cord to my suit and pulled down the lever on the left side of the wall. "Depressurizing airlock, stand by," a computerized voice announced. I glanced through the round window facing the interior of the ship and smiled at Riley. "I'll be back in a bit," I said encouragingly. "Airlock depressurized. Opening airlock. Ready." I pressed the button next to the second door. It opened with a hiss, and instantly, everything except my breathing went silent. The weight of my body was lifted, and I was floating mid-air. I used the thrusters to propel myself out of the airlock, and finally stepped into the vast, empty space. That initial moment felt nauseating at first, leaping out of the spaceship and expecting to see ground beneath you, but instead being met with an endless abyss which threatened to swallow you whole. The ISS-14 towered above me now, much larger up close than I suspected it to be, a silent behemoth which took up almost the entire view in front. The docking bay was right in front of me, so I proceeded there as quickly as the thrusters would allow me. Despite being able to go only 8 miles per hour, I didn't worry about the speed, since I had enough oxygen to go for at least 6 hours, so hopefully I'd be back to the ship by then. "Ian, do you copy?" Carter's voice came through the radio. "Yep, loud and clear," I responded. "Alright, listen, we scanned the area with thermals, and there's no sign of anyone being alive on board the station." "What? Are you sure? Maybe the device malfunctioned." "Definitely not, because we picked up a sign of life outside the ship." "Repeat that last," I said. "There's indication that one of the crew members is spacewalking outside the ship. See that gray node just around the upper right-hand solar panel? He should be around there." "Roger that," I said and looked up. Beyond the top of the station was exactly what was under it. Endless, vast void. It was a long ascent, especially because of the speed of the thrusters, but I slowly made my way up. Halfway there, I stopped at the sight in front of me. "Holy shit," I mumbled. "Ian, you okay?" James asked. I stared in bewilderment, unable to respond. The airlock, which led inside the station, was wide open. That was not uncommon if astronauts went on repair missions which were short. But what bothered me here was the fact that both airlock doors were wide open, letting out all the air. "Guys," I said, "something bad happened here. Both airlock doors are wide open." There was silence on the other end, until Riley simply uttered a dumbfounded,
"What?"
"Probably human error," I said. "That's impossible," Adams scoffed. "The system would have warned them tenfold. You would have to be a complete idiot, suicidal even, to make a mistake like that one." "Well then, I can't explain this," I said and continued ascending. Pretty soon, I reached the top and had a good view of the entire station. The place seemed completely undamaged, so it made sense to me that someone simply made a mistake when opening the airlock. "Any sign of survivors?" Adams asked. I scanned the area and at first saw nothing. And then I noticed it. An astronaut, blended with the white exterior of the station, just floating around, upside down. He showed no signs of movement, so I assumed he was either dead or unconscious.
I see something. Hold up.
I leaned forward and activated the thrusters once more. As I got closer, I tried to speak into the radio to avoid startling the crew member in case he was still alive.
This is Ian Nielsen. Does anyone from the ISS-14 copy?
As I suspected, there was no response. So I simply said,
We're here to rescue you. Try not to move while I attach the safety cord to you.
I got close enough to the astronaut to grab his hand and turn him around. I saw a man under the helmet, seemingly sleeping peacefully. His forehead and the inside of his helmet had blood on them, and I would have thought he was dead, had I not seen the helmet getting fucked up every few seconds from his steady breathing. He had a name tag on his chest that said Harrington.
I found one. He's alive, but he seems to be injured,
I said.
Alright, bring him back, and we'll decide later what to do with the station,
Adam said. I detached the safety cord from myself and attached it to the astronaut. I held the cord with one hand and pressed the button on it. It began slowly pulling the both of us back towards the ship.
Alright, I got him. We're going back.
I stared at the ISS-14 as it grew distant again, occasionally glancing at Harrington to see if he was still breathing. We had passed by the open airlock, and I kept squinting at it, mesmerized and trying to take a closer look, but it was too dark. When it was out of my line of sight, I glanced back at the astronaut. His eyes were wide open, and he was staring at me. I stared at him for a while, not sure if he was dead or alive, or catatonic. But then, I saw him blink. He started darting his eyes around frantically. I finally broke free of my trance and said,
Hey, it's okay, you're safe now. I'm from the Collector 03. We were sent to rescue you.
Harrington mumbled timidly.
Rescue? Yeah, I don't know what happened, but you seem to be the only survivor. I'm bringing you back to our ship.
At this sentence, Harrington's eyes widened even more, and he started panting. Within seconds, he was writhing and screaming, shouting incoherent words. He almost shook me off the cord, and I tried calming him down, but it was hard with the cacophony of radio voices asking me what was going on and Harrington's screaming and squirming.
Hey, calm down. Calm down.
I tried to hold him still, but it was impossible.
Don't do it. Don't bring them back.
I managed to grab those words among all the incoherence in Harrington's sentences.
There's no one else left of your crew. You're the only survivor,
I shouted, but he continued ignoring me. And then, he started coughing violently. Droplets of blood splashed the inside of his helmet, adding to the other already dried blood. He had a coughing fit for about half a minute, and he took a few deep breaths. Then his eyes closed, and he seemingly lost consciousness again.
Ian, report, damn it!
Adams shouted over the radio. It took me a moment to recompose myself, and then I answered.
I think he has internal bleeding. We have to hurry. Riley, get the first aid kit ready.
On it.
Riley responded. Within minutes, Harrington and I were back in the airlock. I pressed the button and closed the external door and pressurized the chamber, putting Harrington in a laying position. Airlock pressurized. Welcome back. As soon as the internal door opened, the crew rushed in and put Harrington on a stretcher, carrying him to the infirmary. I took off my helmet and, with the suit still on, followed them.
Get a suit off.
Riley's voice echoed through the ship. Harrington was laying on his back on a table, Riley on the side of it, taking off his helmet. I got to the other side of the table and helped him take the suit off him. When I reached to help them take his garment off, the astronaut firmly gripped my wrist like a vice. Our eyes met, And again, he had that same petrified look on his face as before. Please don't do it, just kill me now. He mumbled something, but I couldn't understand him. I leaned in and told him to repeat what he said. You brought them back, he said with a trembling voice. I looked down in time to see Riley take off Harrington's garment, and an audible scream was heard from her, along with gasps from the other crew members. When I looked down, I could hardly comprehend what I was seeing. Harrington had a gaping hole in his stomach, and in it, hundreds of thousands of maggots were squirming around, eating away at his wound. They started hopping, some managing to jump onto Riley's arm. She screamed and violently swatted at them, making a break for the exit. Harrington started coughing again, more violently than before. Just before he stopped moving completely, the blood from his cough spurted over my suit, and I recoiled. When I looked down, I nearly started screaming. Along with the blood, there were crimson maggots slithering towards my head. I swatted at them, disgusted and in a panic at the same time. Get out of here, Adams shouted. We didn't need any more encouragement. We rushed outside, and once everyone was out, we pressed the button to lock the door. We glanced through the glass on the door at Harrington's body. More and more maggots squirmed out of Harrington's wound, impossibly many to fit into his stomach alone, swarming his exposed body parts and feasting away on his remains. Is everybody okay? Anyone get bit? Adams asked. Most of us nodded. Riley, what the hell was that? James asked, beads of sweat forming on his temples. Riley opened her mouth as if to say something, her gaze still fixated on the infirmary. She shook her head without saying anything. How the hell did he get maggots on him? I asked. Even if he had a necrotic wound, there's no way so many maggots could just come out of his stomach like that. Well, the only explanation is he or one of the crew members were infected and it got out of control, Adams said. Either way, it doesn't matter. We have to get in touch with HQ. He turned around and left the corridor, and everyone else started towards the control room after him. Riley and I were at the back, and she started down the corridor. I grabbed her arm, a little firmer than I planned to. She shot me a look of confusion as I stared at her exposed forearm. Riley, those maggots touched you. Did they bite you? I asked, silently enough for others not to hear.
No,
she said and jerked her arm free of my grip and looked at me as if she was offended.
You think I would just jeopardize the whole crew like that?
I don't. I just...
And what about you? The ISS member coughed up some maggots on you.
I'm clean. I'm positive, I said with our eyes locked. She crossed her arms and seemed to calm down. She said,
Well, we should all get tested anyway. But we don't have the necessary equipment here.
Right, our priority should be contacting HQ and getting back. If any of us are infected, they can quarantine us. She nodded and motioned me to join the rest of the crew. We entered the control room and heard Carter's voice on the other end of the room. This is the US Collector 03. HQ, do you copy?
This is HQ. What's your situation, Collector?
A crackly voice came through the radio. Move aside, Adams commanded Carter and pressed the button on the panel. HQ, this is Captain Adams. We arrived at the site of the ISS-14. Everyone but one crew member died mysteriously. We managed to bring the crew member back on board, but he died shortly after. There was a brief moment of pause before HQ said,
What happened?
We don't know for sure. The crew member we brought back seems to have been infected. He had flesh-eating maggots under his suit. We had to seal off the infirmary, since we don't know the extent of the threat.
Understood, Collector. Right now, your priority is sterilizing the contaminated areas, in case these maggots can do some serious damage to the vessel. Once you've done that, haul ass back to base so we can quarantine and treat you, if necessary. We're sending someone out there right now.
Copy that, HQ. Collector out. Adams turned to us with his typical stern look and said, "Well, you heard him. Let's first sterilize the infirmary." Hank pressed the button on the control panel. When nothing happened, he pressed it again. He flipped the switch up and down and pressed the button once more before he started repeatedly slamming it. "What's going on, Hank?" Carter asked. Hank pressed the button a few more times before responding. "The sterilization won't work. Button's not responding." "Try some other rooms," Carter suggested. Hank did that and pressed various other buttons, but still no dice.
Shit, now what?
Riley mumbled. Adams sighed and turned to James. He said, "James, I need you to put on the hazmat suit and decontaminate the infirmary manually." "No fucking way," James rebutted. "Have you seen what those angry little fuckers can do? I'm not going in there. You'll do your job." Adams got into James's face before calming down. "Besides, the suit will protect you." He then said to Hank and Carter, "Start the engine. Might as well get going while we're doing this." He turned around to approach the holographic map on the table when Carter spoke. Captain? The engine won't start." Adams turned back and frowned, now visibly frustrated. "What do you mean it won't start? Start it." "It won't fucking start," Carter blurted. There was a moment of intense silence in the room. Adams rubbed his chin and then turned to me. "Ian, check the engine, but put the protection suit on, just in case." I gave him a silent nod of agreement and left the room. James followed behind me. "This is bullshit." He threw his hands up in the air as we made our way to the lockers. "Suck it up, James. The sooner we finish our job, the sooner we can go home," I scoffed. We donned our protective suits and inspected each other for potential faults. And once we were sure everything was okay, I picked up my tools and we went our merry ways. My job was to go under the ship's bottom floor and inspect the engine, and to do that, I had to remove the floor panel and climb down. As I did so and entered the corridor, I heard James's trembling voice on the radio.
"Jesus Christ. Captain, I'm in front of the infirmary. There's more of them in here." "What do you mean?"
Adams asked.
"I mean, there's millions of them, all over the fucking place. I can't even see Harrington's body anymore. Jesus fuck."
My stomach started twisting into knots. I didn't like this at all. Adams continued.
"James, calm down. Listen, we have to decontaminate the room before they spread to the other parts of the ship. Your suit will protect you. Pull the switch, wait until the process is done, and get out." Alright.
James sighed over the radio.
"I'm going in."
Adams spoke to me and asked how things were going on my end, and I told him I was close to the engine. It was darker down here, so I used the flashlight to illuminate the way in front. The corridor echoed with the heavy thuds of my footsteps as I made my way through, until I reached the panel above my head, which said, "Do not remove."
"James, talk to me,"
Adams said.
"I'm still okay, Captain, but I had to stomp all over them. It's disgusting. They seem to be ignoring me, though. Did you pull the switch?"
I pulled out my screwdriver and started to unscrew the panel off.
"Not yet, but I'm almost. Ah! Shit!"
James shouted.
"James, what happened?"
Adams asked.
"Something just fucking bit me!"
James yelled.
"James, that's impossible. They can't get through your suit. It's made out of. There's a fucking hole in my boot. Fuck, I gotta get out of here."
My heart was thumping against my chest rapidly at this point, and I had to stop doing my own job. My left hand frozen on the panel and the other on the screw.
"They're in my suit! Oh god!"
James shouted.
"Get out of there!"
Adams shouted loudly. The next few seconds were filled with James's screams over the radio, intermittently getting louder and quieter, until they stopped completely.
"James?"
I shouted, my own voice trembling now. There was no response, however. Adams shouted again.
Ian, get the hell out of there. Alright, let me just fix the engine. Ian, forget the engine and get back here now. Hold on, if I fix the engine, we can...
The panel partially fell open when I took the second screw off, and from the gap, hundreds of red maggots poured through, falling to the ground with wet slumps. I recoiled in fear as the maggots continued to pour out and pile on the ground in front of me. They started bouncing one by one, trying to reach me. I screamed and bolted for the ladder. All the while, the voices of my crew members echoed through the radio, asking me what was going on. I climbed up and slammed the floor panel shut, leaving me with only the sound of my own frantic breathing. And then I heard a thud, and then another, and another. In moments, hundreds of thuds were heard on the panel, like the sound of rainfall. And I could see the floor bending outwards under the pressure. Maggots started crawling from under the edges of the dented panel, and I screamed again, running for dear life.
Ian, respond. Abandoned ship!
I shouted between breaths, looking back behind me. I could already see thousands of maggots on the ground and walls behind me.
What's going on?
Adams shouted.
Maggots! Everywhere! Get to your suits! We have to run!
I ran straight to the locker and took off my protective suit, donning the space one instead. My trembling hands making it difficult to suit up. The rest of the crew members were there in a matter of seconds, putting their own suits on. No time for inspection, get to the airlock, Adams shouted. I ran out first, rushing down the corridor, and stopped when I glanced at the infirmary. James was slumped over the threshold, leaving the door open. He had managed to take his suit off, down to his waist, before he died. Maggots were wiggling inside his empty eye socket, and his teeth were visible due to his lips being completely eaten. His body and the areas in front and inside the infirmary were crawling with maggots, possibly millions, piling atop each other on every single surface of the room, making it look like it was moving with their slithering. Adams pushed me, and I forced myself to look away and continue running. We rushed inside the airlock, and as I turned around, I saw Hank lagging behind, running towards us. His right arm had maggots on it, which he seemingly wasn't aware of. All of us were probably thinking the same thing, but no one wanted to say it. That's why Adams stepped up and closed the airlock before Hank could get inside. Depressurizing airlock, stand by. Hank slammed the button to open the airlock from the outside, but it wasn't responsive during the pressurization.
Captain, let me in. They're close.
He looked behind at the mass, which drew closer by the second. Hank, I'm so sorry, Adam said. Hank started screaming and flailing his arms. Maggots started appearing in his helmet, and he threw it off, trying to run in the opposite direction in a desperate attempt to escape. He never stood a chance, since the maggots swarmed up to his knees in seconds and trapped him like quicksand before he was completely covered by them. Riley screamed and cried, trying to put her hands on her mouth, but unable to because of the helmet. Opening airlock. The door opened, and all went silent again. Never before has the inhospitable vacuum of space felt so welcoming. For a while, we floated in silence, processing what just happened. And then Adams spoke up. A sentence which sent a chill down my spine so sharply that, for a moment, that I thought that I myself had maggots in my suit.
We need to get to the ISS-14,
he said, somberly. Riley and I shot each other a confused stare, but said nothing. Adams was already well on his way to the airlock of the SS-14, slowly propelling himself with his thrusters. Carter followed closely behind, and soon the entire group of survivors was unanimously headed towards the silent behemoth of a ship.
Captain, there might be maggots in there.
I said through the radio.
I know.
Adams's voice came tiredly through the radio.
But some of us are low on oxygen. We need to replenish it, and if possible, repressurize the station. We need to contact HQ and warn them of the dangers here before those maggots spread.
Even though no one responded, it was clear that we all agreed. After all, we had only two choices: drift around in the vacuum of space until help came, or try to find shelter inside. Both options seemed equally daunting.
What the hell are those things? Space maggots?
Carter asked.
Whatever they are, they can't be allowed to go back to Earth.
Adams responded. We reached the airlock of the ISS-14 and went inside. The entire ship seemed to be dark, so we turned on our belt flashlights.
Should we close the hatch?
Riley asked.
Yeah, might as well. But if the station is infected, we might have a better chance surviving in the vacuum. So be ready for a quick venting.
Adam said, slowly propelling himself deeper into the station. Carter clicked the button to close the exterior airlock door, and once we were inside, he closed the interior one as well. Adams went ahead, the corridor illuminated by his flashlight like a wave of light. We followed him, nervously jumping at every tiny detail on the walls which resembled maggots or seemed like it was moving.
All the doors are open, except the control room,
Adam said.
Yeah, so?
Carter asked.
They may have vented the station from there. Common procedure is that in case any venting needs to be done, all astronauts are to put on their suits and head to the control room. Well, let's see if anyone is inside,
I said. Adams nodded and pressed the button next to the door. A message popped up that said, "Warning, pressure inside the room is higher than the pressure outside. Do you wish to equalize pressure?" Adams clicked on yes. "Equalizing pressure, stand by." The message blinked on and off for a few minutes, and I felt myself becoming heavier gradually as the gravity adjusted, until all four of us were with our feet on the floor. The display turned green as it said, "Pressure adjusted. Warning, emergency power online. Oxygen production offline. Please use emergency oxygen stations to replenish your oxygen." The door slid aside, and we were met with a dim red glow of the control room. Immediately, we saw the body of an astronaut lying face down in the corner of the room. Riley rushed to the crew member and turned her to herself, but her look of vague hope turned to disappointment.
She's dead.
The rest of us approached and saw the astronaut's face. It was a young woman, no older than 30, blue in the face, but despite the color of her skin, she looked like she was sleeping peacefully. Her name tag said, Moody. "She's holding something," Carter said. We glanced down and saw what looked like a camcorder in her hand. Adam snatched it and opened it, and the rest of us gathered around him. There was a folder open, and Adams highlighted the first video by date. It started playing. The video was from the perspective of one of the astronauts, male, judging by the voice. He was hovering above the ISS and zooming in on something on top of the ship. When he zoomed in enough, it became visible that there was some sort of red egg floating around. If he was saying anything, we couldn't hear him in the vacuum of space. The video cut out, and the next frame showed the astronaut gently holding the object from the previous footage in his hand. The red egg had veiny marks on it, and it was slightly bigger than the astronaut's palm. The astronaut flipped the egg from side to side, examining it curiously. The video ended there. Adams played the next video. The frame showed the egg from before, now in a glass display case inside the station.
What the hell is that?
The person recording, now a female scientist, asked.
No idea.
Another voice responded.
Harrington found it outside, and HQ wanted it brought back.
What if it's dangerous?
The female astronaut asked.
Well, whatever it is, it won't break this case. Nothing can. The scanner shows no signs of activity inside the egg.
A third voice said. The camera zoomed in on the egg before the video ended abruptly. Adams played the next one. This video showed the same room as before, but now the camera was placed on the desk, since we could see Moody sitting by it, facing the camera.
Base wants the egg tested. They don't want to risk bringing the egg to Earth, so I've been appointed as lead scientist. My job is to monitor the egg and conduct tests to see what's inside. So far, there's nothing strange about the egg itself. Maybe it's not even an egg. I'll continue to run tests.
She reached out for the camera, and the video ended. The next video showed the same scene, and a visibly more tired Moody. She rubbed her eyes and faced the camera, before saying,
Another egg was found today. Nelson was performing a module check when he saw it. Despite initial skepticism, the egg will be taken back to base for study. There were apparently more, and all seemed to be coming from one direction. There may be a nest close by. As for this one, there seems to be some signs of minor activity inside. Hard to tell what it is though. Whatever it is, it could be our actual first contact.
She ended the video. I heard Carter mumble, "Oh shit," under his breath. Adams played the next video. The footage showed the same egg from before, but it was now cracked at the top and on the side. Tiny crimson maggots were squirming around the display case lazily.
What are those?
Moody asked.
Alien worms?
A voice next to her asked.
Was the egg rotten?
She inquired.
Didn't look like it. Maybe the worms are supposed to hatch out of it. No idea.
One of the maggots started slithering on the glass, moving upwards. The camera zoomed in, and I clearly saw the bodies of the maggots crawling over each other. It looked like they had tiny hairs on their bodies. The video ended. I felt itchy all over my body, unable to shake the feeling of bugs crawling all over me. The next video showed Moody in the same room. There was visibly a lot more maggots inside the display. She said,
They are reproducing at an enormous pace. The maggots seem to be dormant in the vacuum, but able to survive. Keith followed the trace where the eggs are coming from, and he says he found their nest close by. It seems that this is really going to be first contact. He hasn't responded to our call yet though, so the signal must be bad there.
The video ended, and there was only one more video remaining. Adams played it. The frame was shaky, but we saw what was clearly the room from the previous footages. However, this time the glass display was broken, and there were countless maggots all over the place, covering every inch of the floor and every piece of item and furniture inside the room. The egg inside the display was broken into pieces now, and barely visible from all the maggots crawling over it.
Moody, move!
Someone shouted. Moody panted in panic and pressed the button to lock the door. She pointed the camera left, down the hallway, and thousands more maggots came into view. Moody turned around and ran. A blood-curdling scream was heard somewhere before it was completely silenced. Moody ran inside the control room and turned around. Harrington came into view with his spacesuit. He pressed the button to lock the door from the outside and shouted,
Moody, vent the station.
Wait, what about you and the others?
No time, I'll open the second airlock. Get ready.
He ran out of view, ignoring Moody's plea to stop. Another scream was heard over Moody's radio. She stood in the room, panting in panic and looking over her shoulder.
Moody, do it!
Harrington shouted over the radio. Moody approached the panel in the corner of the room and opened it, revealing a big switch. She grabbed it and held it hesitantly.
Moody, don't! I can't get to my spacesuit!
Another crew member's voice came through.
Do it!
Harrington shouted. Moody was audibly crying by this moment. With hesitation, she pulled the switch down and heard another short-lived scream. The video cut out and came back the following second, showing Moody in a dim-lit room with red light, gasping for air. She pointed the camera towards herself. Tears were streaming down her face. She exhaled with a trembling voice and said,
Oxygen production was damaged. I only have a few minutes left. HQ doesn't know what happened, and everyone else is dead. All of the maggots have been fanning out, but the nest is still out there. Whoever finds this, you have to destroy the nest. It's close by. The coordinates are on the wall here.
She pointed the camera at a wall, and we unanimously looked at the numbers on the wall, which were still there. Moody took a few shallow breaths and said,
Also, please send my final message to my sister.
She started sobbing more.
Haley, I'm so sorry. You were right. Space is really bad. I wish I'd listened to you. I'm glad Mom isn't alive to witness this. I'm sorry for being so stubborn. I'll always love you, little sister.
She sniffled and cried before turning off the camera. The four of us stared at the blank screen in silence. Jesus, Carter muttered. So, what now? I asked. Adams sighed and gently placed the camcorder next to Moody's body. We're going to the nest, he said with determination. Whoa, Captain, you can't be serious, Carter said. Carter, you can stay if you like, Adams said and looked at Riley and I. Same goes for you too. Wait for rescue if you like, but I have to finish this. No way, Captain. I'm coming with you, I said. Riley agreed to come too. So in the end, Carter threw his hands up in the air and said he'd come along as well. Alright, then let's fucking do this, Adam said. We replenished our oxygen tanks and found whatever could be used as a weapon. There were no guns aboard the ISS, which probably wouldn't be useful against maggots anyway. So instead, we grabbed lighters, deodorant cans, and pieces of cloth that we could set on fire. Before we knew it, we were back outside in the vacuum of space. Adams led the way, propelling himself through, with the three of us following closely behind.
How the fuck do we even know how this place looks?
Carter asked.
For all we know, it could just be a floating nest and long gone from that location. No choice,
Adams replied.
We gotta find that thing. If not us, someone else will have to do it. We're not paid to do this sort of Carter. If you're just gonna bitch the whole time, then turn back and get the fuck out of here.
Adams shouted through the radio. Carter hasn't responded. We flew in silence for a while, until Riley spotted some tiny object in the distance. It looked round and reddish.
What the fuck is that?
I asked, immediately suspecting to one thing. Adams flew there and grabbed the object, inspecting it curiously. He turned to us so that we can observe it as well.
An egg, just like in Moody's footage,
he said, letting the egg float. Indeed, it looked exactly like the red veiny egg in the video. I saw more details than in the video though. In addition to the bulging veins, there were thin, orange ones on the inside, visible on the surface. It reminded me of the time when I cracked open an egg, and instead of the yolk, saw an embryo of a chick. Adams grabbed his spray can and lighter.
Everybody, back up,
he said. He flicked the lighter on and the flame appeared, moving not upwards like in normal gravity, but dancing in various directions, almost like when blood starts to flow underwater. Adams put the spray can behind the flame and pressed the button. Although we heard no sound, we saw the wave of flame expanding like a torch and setting the egg aflame. Immediately, we saw little maggots wiggling out and going for the captain. But Adams didn't let up with the flame. His face intense with revenge and anger, the flame reflecting from his helmet. He was practically burning them to a crisp. Even after the egg was nothing more than a burnt shell, he continued burning it.
Captain, you got him. Let's go,
Carter said. Adams finally let up, observing his artistic piece of work, before letting out one more gust of flame and then turning around.
Let's go,
he said emotionlessly. We were far ahead of the ISS by this point, a good 20 minutes since we left. The station seemed tiny from here, and we were mere specks of dust floating through space, surrounded by miles and miles of vast nothingness.
Captain, we still on the right track?
I asked. Adams kept quiet for a moment and then pointed over yonder. Riley, Carter, and I looked in the direction he was pointing, and there it was. Some kind of an object in the distance. It was hard to tell what it was, but it looked rectangular, human-made, and not crude like a piece of rock from space. We started seeing eggs more frequently floating past us, but there were too many to deal with individually, so we just let them be. As we got closer, it became clearer that the object we were seeing was indeed like a cube. Greenish in color, with black lines going along the edges like columns.
Is this it?
Carter asked. It was big, a lot bigger than I anticipated, easily towering over 50 feet on each side. Right in front of us was a rectangle-shaped entrance near the bottom part of the cube object. One egg floated out of there, spinning in the air. Adams pushed it out of the way and illuminated the entrance. It had the same kind of green and black colors like on the exterior, but nothing noteworthy about it. He looked at me and gestured with his head for me to go in. I did as he said, and gasped in awe at what I saw. The interior looked exactly like the exterior, but the greenish lines that went along the walls glowed in color that gave off the vibe of radioactive material, showering me and my crew members in sickly green. I realized that there were eggs strewn about, firmly stuck on the walls in some sort of gooey substance.
What the fuck? This must be the nest. Captain, are you seeing this?
Carter asked. When we got no response from Adams, we shot around to see what was going on. Before we realized what was happening, the exit slid shut and Adams was out of sight, the green glowing brighter now.
Captain!
I shouted. For a moment, there was only silence. And then Adams spoke.
I'm sorry, guys. I didn't want to do this. You see, these worms aren't just flesh-eating parasites. The maggots can devour things quickly, yeah, and they can reproduce quickly too. But they are also intelligent beyond our comprehension.
My heart was beating fast at this moment, and I got a really bad feeling.
Captain, open this fucking door!
Carter slammed on the wall, which was previously an open space. Adams continued.
They can get inside the host and devour him from the inside out in a matter of seconds, taking control of the body. You see, Adams wasn't careful enough when evacuating the ship, and the three of you didn't care enough to check him for any marks. I can't allow you to stop this process.
Carter started slamming the door harder, Riley visibly panicking, and I kept glancing around to see if any of the eggs had hatched by any chance. Just then, a voice came over our radio.
ISS-14, this is HQ. Is anyone still alive there? HQ, we're here! We got a situation here!
I shouted into the radio. A moment later, HQ said again.
This is HQ. Is anyone alive out there?
I tried again, along with Riley and Carter, but they couldn't hear us. And then Adams spoke.
HQ, this is Captain Adams of the Collector. There are no other survivors. I'm on my way to you now. Copy that, Adams. We'll stand by.
HQ said. We tried contacting HQ again, but to no avail. Either Adams jumped our signal or it was blocked inside the structure. Just then, I caught something with my peripheral vision. One of the eggs had started to hatch, and maggots were wiggling out of it.
We gotta get out of here,
I said. Carter was still busy slamming the door and trying to contact HQ, unaware of the eggs hatching.
Carter, we gotta get the fuck out now,
I said. He finally realized the severity of our situation, and all three of us started propelling each other through the structure. using spray cans and lighters to burn everything and anything that got anywhere close to our vicinity. We had the advantage of the structure being spacious and the worms not being able to jump around in vacuum, so we were relatively safe, except for the ones that made their way accidentally to us. The structure seemed to wind around as a corridor, eggs and slime decorating most of its interior. I started to lose hope, and I thought this place would become my tomb, leaving my body to float in the vacuum of space for hundreds of years. But then we saw the exit in the form of a square-shaped hole. We propelled ourselves out, turning around only to burn the rest of the maggots that stumbled outside.
Shit!
Carter screamed, swatting at his own hand and trying to grab something, but it was too late. There was already a tiny hole in his suit, letting out a steady gust of wind. Carter grabbed his helmet with both hands. The shocking realization of what he was about to do hit me, and I tried to stop him.
Carter, no!
I shouted, but it was too late. Carter twisted, and his helmet came off. Instantly, his face started contorting into one of palpable pain and changing colors. I tried to put his helmet back on, but he pushed me and threw the helmet further away. You'd think that dying in the vacuum of space is a relatively quick process, but it's not. It's very slow and very painful. Carter convulsed, his face turning blue and bloating, his eyes turning bloodshot for what felt like minutes, until he stopped moving completely and was left floating in the air as a rag doll.
Ian, we gotta go.
Riley sobbed, and I knew she was right. We tried contacting HQ, but it didn't work. So we simply flew back to the ISS as fast as we could. We had to stop Adams, or whatever those maggots controlling him were. After around 20 minutes, we finally got back and saw another ship waiting nearby. We were greeted by the crew members, who needed a few minutes to understand what we were rambling about. When I finally asked them about Adams, they said he already left with the other team. We tried to explain what had happened, but no one believed us. We had to tell them to go and check out the structure for themselves, but to bring flamethrowers. That took another hour, and when they came back with 2 men less, they asked us to tell them everything. Adams had returned to Earth by then. When we got back, we got information that he volunteered to be on the team which is running tests on the alien egg brought back to Earth. Again, they refused to believe our claims that he was being controlled by space maggots. So, we knew we had to take care of things ourselves. It's been 2 days, but Riley and I managed to get to the base. I'm afraid that this will be my last mission though. I discovered a tiny wound on my right hand when I got back to Earth. There is no pain or anything, but something is wrong. I can feel it. First, I lost control of my hand, and now my entire right arm. It's moving, but not by my own action. I can already feel part of my neck doing involuntary movement, so I'm afraid I'm a goner. Adams needs to be stopped and the egg destroyed. Even so, I feel like this is a losing battle that we're fighting. That structure out in space was made by someone or something other than humans. And they put those eggs there for a reason.